Take my children, she screamed into the howling blizzard, clutching two half-frozen babies to her chest. Someone please just take them. But the Montana winter had no mercy. Neither did hunger. Neither did grief. Marian Doyle was minutes from watching her son and daughter die in her arms until a shadow on horseback emerged from the white hell and growled 6 words that would change everything. You're all coming with me. Stay until the end to see how love can bloom in the coldest season, and comment below with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The wind didn't howl. It screamed. It tore across the Montana territory like something alive and furious, ripping shutters from their hinges and rattling the bones of every half-built structure from Fort Benton to the Canadian line. The winter of 1876 had arrived early and vengeful, burying hope beneath 3 feet of snow and leaving only the strong or the desperate still breathing. Marian Doyle was both. She knelt on the frozen floor of her collapsing cabin, her hand shaking so violently she could barely fasten the last button on her daughter's threadbare coat. Lily, 5 years old, pale as moonlight, with eyes too large for her gaunt face, stared up at her mother with the kind of trust that broke hearts. "Mama," Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Are we going somewhere warm?" Marian forced her cracked lips into something that might have been a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Somewhere warm." The lie tasted like ash. Behind them, Jacob, 8 years old and trying so hard to be brave, coughed into his sleeve. The sound was wet and rattling, a noise that had been getting worse for 3 days. Marian had heard that cough before. She'd heard it in the mining camps, in the fever tents, in the places where children went and didn't come back. She had no medicine, no food beyond a handful of frozen beans, no firewood, no hope. And outside the blizzard was gathering its strength for another assault. Marian stood slowly, her legs weak from hunger and exhaustion. The cabin, if you could even call it that, had been her home for 6 months. It was supposed to be temporary just until Thomas's mining wages came through, just until they could afford something better. But Thomas was dead now, buried under half a mountain of collapsed rock, along with 17 other men. The mining company had expressed its sincere condolences before informing her that her husband's final wages would be withheld to cover equipment damage. Equipment damage. As if Thomas's life was worth less than a broken pickaxe. She tried everything after that. Begged the neighbors for work, but they were barely surviving themselves. Pleaded with the company store for credit, but they'd laughed in her face. Even attempted to find employment in town, only to be told that respectable establishments didn't hire desperate widows with hungry children in tow. The charity had dried up 2 weeks ago. Now there was nothing left but the choice no mother should ever have to make. "Jacob," Marian's voice cracked. "Come here, honey." Her son shuffled closer, his thin shoulders hunched against the cold, seeping through every gap in the walls. He looked so much like his father, same dark hair, same stubborn jaw, same eyes that tried to pretend everything would be fine, even when the world was ending. "I need you to be very brave," Marian whispered, kneeling down to his level. "Can you do that for me?" Jacob nodded solemnly. "I'm always brave, Mama. Papa said so." The knife in Marian's chest twisted deeper. She pulled both children close, breathing in the smell of them unwashed. Yes, but still hers, still perfect. Still the only good thing she'd ever created in this harsh world. Tears froze on her cheeks before they could fall. "We're going into town," she managed. "And when we get there, there are people who can take care of you better than I can. People with food and warm beds and—" "No!" Jacob pulled back, his young face suddenly fierce. "We're staying together. You promised. Jacob, you promised Mama. After Papa died, you said we'd always be together." "Know what I said, but no." His voice rose to the shout, then dissolved into another racking cough that doubled him over. When he straightened, there was blood on his lips. Marian grabbed him, her heart hammering. "Jacob! Jacob, look at me!" But her son turned his face away, his small body rigid with betrayal. Lily began to cry, soft, hopeless sobs that cut through the wind's fury like whispers from a grave. "I'm sorry," Marian breathed. "I'm so sorry. But you'll die if you stay with me. Don't you understand? You'll both die, and I can't watch that happen. I can't." The words came out as a wail, raw and animal. She'd held herself together for so long, been so strong, but the dam had finally cracked, and everything was pouring out. The grief, the rage, The bone-deep terror of watching your children waste away while you stood helpless. She'd failed them, failed Thomas, failed herself. But maybe, just maybe, if she could get them to families who actually had resources, who could feed them and warm them and save them, then at least they'd survive. At least part of Thomas would live on, even if it killed her to let them go. "Put your coats on," Marion said flatly, standing up and wiping her face with numb fingers. "We leave now." "Mama, it's dark," Jacob protested weakly. "And the storm." "I know. We won't make it. We will." "Mama, we will." She repeated, her voice hard as iron. "Because we have to." She wrapped a shawl around her own shoulders, thin, worthless, but all she had, and picked up the small lamp that held their last precious drops of oil. The flame guttered and danced, throwing monstrous shadows across the walls. For one terrible moment, Marion let herself imagine just staying, lying down with her children, pulling them close, letting the cold take them all together. Quick, painless, final. No more hunger, no more fear, no more impossible choices. But then Lily's small hand slipped into hers, trusting and warm, and Marion knew she couldn't give up. Not yet. Not while there was even the smallest chance of salvation. "Come on, babies," she whispered. "Let's go find you a home." Done. The blizzard hit them like a fist. One moment they were stumbling out of the cabin's dubious shelter, and the next the world became nothing but white chaos and screaming wind. Snow drove into Marion's face like needles, blinding her, stealing her breath. She clutched Lily against her chest with one arm while dragging Jacob with the other, her boots sinking deep into drifts that tried to swallow them whole. "Keep moving," she shouted, though her voice was instantly torn away. "Don't stop." But Jacob was already faltering, his coughs coming harsh and desperate. Lily had gone silent in her arms, her small body limp and frighteningly cold. They'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes. The town was 3 miles away. "We're not going to make it," Marion realized with crystal clarity. "We're going to die out here. All 3 of us." The thought should have terrified her, but instead she felt only a strange, distant relief. At least they'd be together. At least she wouldn't have to hand her children over to strangers and walk away alone. At least her foot caught on something hidden beneath the snow, and she went down hard, landing on her knees, with Lily still clutched to her chest. Jacob collapsed beside her, his thin body shaking. "Get up!" Marion screamed at herself. "Get up, damn you!" But her legs wouldn't cooperate. The cold had sunk too deep, turned her muscles to frozen lead. She tried once, twice, then simply knelt there in the snow, holding her children close as the storm raged around them. "I'm sorry," she sobbed into Lily's hair. "I'm so sorry, babies. I tried so hard." Jacob pressed against her side, his voice small and scared. "Mama, I'm sleepy." "I know, honey, I know." "Can we rest? Just for a minute?" "Yes, sweetheart, we can rest." She knew what that meant, knew that if they stopped moving, they'd never move again. But she was so tired, and her children were suffering, and maybe this was mercy after all. Maybe the cold would be gentle. Maybe they'd just drift off to sleep and never wake up together until the end. Marion pulled both children into her lap, wrapping her body around them like a shield. The wind howled its triumph. The snow piled higher. The darkness pressed close. And then through the white chaos, she heard something impossible. A horse. At first she thought she was hallucinating, her dying brain conjuring phantoms. But the sound came again, closer, now hoofbeats muffled by snow and a man's voice cutting through the storm. "Hold on, I see you!" Marion's head snapped up, her heart suddenly hammering. Through the curtain of snow, a dark shape was moving toward them, a rider on a massive horse, both barely visible against the white hell. "Here!" she screamed, her voice breaking. "We're here. Please, please." The rider reached them in seconds, swinging down from his saddle with the grace of someone who'd been born on horseback. In the dim light of the storm, Marion caught only impressions: tall, broad-shouldered face, hidden behind a snow-crusted scarf, ice clinging to his dark hair. "How many?" he shouted over the wind, his voice deep and rough. "3. 2 children. They're sick. Please, you have to take them." "Can you stand?" "Take my children." Marion screamed, thrusting Lily toward him. Just take them! Leave me! Save them! The stranger didn't take Lily. Instead, he grabbed Marion's arm and hauled her to her feet with enough force to make her teeth rattle. His grip was iron-hard, uncompromising. Listen to me. He growled, his face inches from hers. We're about half a mile from an old trapper's shack. If we move now, right now, we might make it. But I need you to walk. Can you do that? I can't, my children. Your children need their mother, he snapped. So you're going to put one foot in front of the other, and you're going to keep moving, and you're going to live. Understand? Marion stared at him, this stranger who'd appeared from nowhere like an answer to a prayer she'd been too broken to speak. His eyes, the only part of his face she could see, were hard and cold as winter itself. But beneath that coldness, she saw something else. Certainty. I'll carry the boy, he said, already bending to scoop Jacob up. You take the girl. Stay close to my horse, he knows the way. If you fall, I'll come back for you. But don't fall. Now move. He didn't wait for her response. Just turned and began walking, carrying Jacob like he weighed nothing, his horse following obediently at his shoulder. After a moment, the animal turned its head and looked at Marion with large, patient eyes. Move those eyes, seemed to say. He told you to move. Marion shifted Lily in her arms, took a shuddering breath, and followed. The shack appeared out of the storm like a gift from God himself, low, rough, half buried in snow, but solid. The stranger kicked the door open and gestured sharply for Marion to enter. She stumbled inside, nearly falling again, her legs barely holding her weight. Put her there, the man commanded, pointing to a pile of old furs in the corner. I'll get the fire going. Marion laid Lily down gently, then turned to help with Jacob, but the stranger had already placed the boy beside his sister and was moving with swift efficiency around the small space. Within minutes, he'd coaxed a fire to life in the crude stone hearth and was dragging more furs and blankets from a chest against the wall. Get their wet clothes off, he ordered, not looking at Marion. Get them wrapped up. There's water in the bucket, it's frozen, but I'll melt it. Marion moved on autopilot, her frozen fingers fumbling with buttons and laces. Lily's skin was ice-cold and waxy. Jacob's breathing came in shallow, rapid pants. Terror clawed at her throat. They're dying, she whispered. Oh God, they're dying. They're not dying, the stranger said flatly, hanging a battered pot over the fire. They're cold and sick, but they're breathing. Get them warm. That's what matters now. He worked with the calm focus of someone who'd seen worse and survived. As the fire grew, heat began to fill the small space, driving back the killing cold. Marion wrapped her children in every available blanket, tucking them close to the flames, rubbing their hands and feet to restore circulation. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, color began to return to Lily's cheeks. Jacob's breathing eased slightly. They weren't dying. Not yet. Marion sank back on her heels, her whole body shaking. Now that the immediate crisis had passed, the full weight of what had almost happened crashed down on her like an avalanche. She'd almost killed them, almost walked them straight into death because she'd been too proud or too desperate to accept that she couldn't fix this alone. Here. The stranger pressed a cup of hot water into her hands. Drink. She obeyed mechanically, the warmth spreading through her chest like liquid gold. When she lowered the cup, she finally got her first clear look at her rescuer. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with a weathered, sun-dark face that suggested years of outdoor work. His hair was black and shaggy, his jaw shadowed with several days' worth of beard. But it was his eyes that caught her, sharp and gray as storm clouds set beneath straight black brows. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen hard things and survived them. Thank you, Marion managed. I can't even begin to... Save it, he said curtly, turning back to the fire. You're not out of this yet. Marion flinched at the rough dismissal, but couldn't argue. He was right. Even with the fire, even with shelter, they were still in desperate straits. Jacob's cough was worse than ever, rattling in his chest like broken glass. Lily had started to whimper in her sleep, a thin, pitiful sound. They need medicine, Marion said helplessly. A doctor. I don't have money for either. Town's got a doctor, the stranger replied, not looking up from the pot he was stirring. Storm should break by morning. We'll head in then. He finally looked at her, one eyebrow raised. You think I saved you just to watch you freeze on the next stretch of road? No, Marion's throat closed. I didn't expect People don't usually help, he finished dryly. Yeah, well, world's cruel enough without adding to it. Silence fell, broken only by the fire's crackle and the wind's howl outside. Marian studied her rescuer from beneath lowered lashes, trying to piece together who or what he was. His clothes were worn but well-made working gear, not poverty rags. His horse tethered just inside the door was a magnificent beast, obviously well cared for. He moved like someone comfortable in his own skin, someone who'd spent years learning to rely on himself alone. A cowboy, maybe. Or a horse trader. One of those men who drifted from ranch to ranch, never staying long, never putting down roots. "What's your name?" she asked finally. He hesitated, as if even that small piece of information was something to be guarded. "Cole," he said at last. "Cole Trapper." "I'm Marian Doyle. This is Jacob and Lily." Cole nodded once, acknowledging, then returned his attention to the fire. Clearly he wasn't one for small talk. Marian let the silence stretch, too exhausted to force conversation. She pulled Jacob and Lily closer, monitoring their breathing, whispering soft reassurances, even though they couldn't hear. The warmth of the fire seeped into her bones, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt something other than despair. Not hope exactly, but not hopelessness either. What? Marian must have dozed off because she jerked awake to find pale morning light filtering through gaps in the shack's walls. The storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Cole was already up, checking his horse's hooves and packing supplies into worn saddlebags. "How are they?" He asked without turning. Marian checked quickly. Both children were still asleep, their breathing steadier than it had been in days. Lily's forehead felt cooler. Jacob's color was better. "Alive," she breathed. "They're alive." "Good. We move in 5 minutes. There's hardtack in the chest. Get some food in you." The hardtack was dry and flavorless, but Marian chewed it gratefully. Feeling strength return to her limbs. She roused the children gently, helping them eat, murmuring encouragement. Jacob was still weak, but he managed to stand. Lily clung to her mother with renewed strength. They were going to make it. They were actually going to survive. Cole led them out into a transformed world. The blizzard had painted everything white and clean, erasing all traces of the previous night's terror. The sun hung low and pale in a clear blue sky. The air was so cold it burned to breathe, but after the storm, it felt almost gentle. "Town's about 3 miles east," Cole said, swinging into his saddle. "I'll take the boy up with me. You can manage the girl." "Yes." Marian lifted Lily, settling her on one hip. "Thank you, Mr. Trapper, for everything." Cole's expression didn't change. "Like I said, save it for when we're actually somewhere safe." They set off across the snow. Cole setting a steady pace that ate up the miles without exhausting them. Marian focused on putting one foot in front of the other, her arms wrapped tight around Lily. In the daylight, with shelter and food and rescue behind them, the previous night's desperation seemed like a fever dream. Had she really been ready to give her children away, to abandon them to strangers rather than fight harder to keep them? The shame of it burned hotter than the cold. "Stop!" Cole said suddenly, reining his horse to a halt. Marian froze, her heart jumping. What's wrong?" "Nothing, just need to know something before we get to town." He looked down at her, his gray eyes unreadable. "Last night you were screaming for me to take your kids and leave you. You still planning on giving them up?" The question hit like a slap. Marian's arms tightened instinctively around Lily. No, I don't know. I don't have any way to feed them, and Jacob needs a doctor, and I can't." "That's not what I asked," Cole interrupted. "I asked if you still want to give them up." "Want?" Marian's voice cracked. "Of course I don't want to. They're my children, but wanting doesn't put food on the table or medicine in their lungs. Wanting doesn't—" "Answer's no then," Cole said calmly. "Good, because I've got an idea, and it only works if you're willing to keep fighting." Marian stared up at him, barely daring to breathe. "What kind of idea?" "The Thornton Ranch, about 10 miles north of Fort Benton. I'm headed there to start work, as head wrangler job's been waiting for me since last month. They're always looking for extra hands, especially with spring coming. Ranch like that needs cooks, laundry help in the big house. It's honest work and it pays." Hope flared in Marion's chest, bright and painful. You think they'd hire me? Can you cook? Yes. Do laundry? Of course. Then maybe. Cole's expression softened fractionally. Old Mrs. Thornton, who runs the place, is hard as nails, but she's fair. And she's got a soft spot for kids. Might be she'd give you a chance. Why? Marion whispered. Why would you do this for us? You don't even know me. Cole was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with some old pain. Had a sister once, he said quietly. She got married. Young husband turned out to be a mean drunk. Beat her. By the time I found out, she'd already convinced herself she deserved it. Stayed with him for 3 more years before he finally drank himself to death. His jaw tightened. Point is, she kept thinking she had to handle everything alone. Wouldn't ask for help. Wouldn't accept it when it was offered. Nearly killed her. He looked down at Marion, his gray eyes intense. There's no shame in accepting help when you need it, he said. And from where I'm standing, you need it. So the question is, you proud enough to turn it down or brave enough to take it? Marion's throat burned with unshed tears. All her life she'd been taught that a woman's worth was measured by her ability to manage to cope, to never be a burden. Thomas had worked himself to death trying to provide, and when he'd failed, Marion had assumed the failure was somehow hers too. But maybe accepting help wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the bravest thing she could do. I'll take it, she said firmly. Whatever work they have, whatever they're willing to offer, I'll take it, and I'll earn my keep, I swear it. Cole nodded once satisfied. Good. Then let's get you and these kids somewhere warm. We can figure out the rest later. He nudged his horse forward, and Marion fell into step beside him, Lily still cradled in her arms. Behind them, the abandoned trapper's shack slowly disappeared into the white landscape. Ahead, the future waited, uncertain, yes, but no longer hopeless. As they walked, Jacob stirred against Cole's chest and mumbled something too quiet to hear. What's that, boy? Cole asked gruffly. Jacob lifted his head, blinking in the bright sunlight. Are you going to take care of us now? The question hung in the cold air. Marion held her breath. Cole was silent for several heartbeats. Then, somebody's got to. Might as well be me. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't even particularly warm. But coming from this hard-guarded man who'd appeared out of a blizzard like some kind of dark angel, it felt like the most binding oath Marion had ever heard. She blinked back tears and kept walking. Fort Benton materialized from the snowy landscape like a rough-edged jewel, a frontier town clinging stubbornly to the banks of the Missouri River, built on fur trading and gold fever, and the kind of restless hope that drew desperate people west. Cole led them straight to a weathered building with a painted sign, Dr. Henry Blackwell, physician. Wait here, Cole said, dismounting with Jacob still in his arms. I'll see if he's in. But before he could knock, the door swung open to reveal a wiry man in his 50s, gray-bearded and sharp-eyed. Cole Trapper, he said dryly. Heard you were finally heading back this way. What have you brought me? Sick boy, cough, fever, blood. Girl's better but needs checking too. Dr. Blackwell's expression turned serious. Sorry, bring them in. The examination was thorough and professional. Blackwell listened to Jacob's lungs, checked his throat, asked questions in a calm voice that put the boy at ease. When he finished, he turned to Marion with a grave expression. Your son has pneumonia, he said bluntly. Not as far along as it could be, but serious nonetheless. He needs rest, warmth, proper food, and medicine. Without treatment, he could die within the week. The words hit Marion like hammers, even though she'd already suspected as much. How much, she asked hoarsely, for the medicine and your services? Blackwell named a figure that might as well have been $1 million. Marion's face went white. I can't possibly. She'll work it off. Cole interrupted, his voice flat and brooking no argument. Thornton Ranch is hiring her on. She'll pay you in installments. Blackwell's bushy eyebrows rose. Will she now, and you're guaranteeing this? I am. The doctor studied Cole for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, because it's you asking, Cole, and because I remember what you did for my nephew that time. But I'll want to see regular payments, understand? This isn't charity. Understood. Marion said quickly, her voice shaking with relief. Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. Blackwell waved off her gratitude and began preparing medicine, bitter syrups, and powders wrapped in paper along with careful instructions. He examined Lily, next pronouncing her basically healthy but undernourished. As he worked, he talked, "You've got Cole Trapper to thank for this," he said conversationally. "Most folks wouldn't have ridden out in that storm last night. Hell, most folks would have frozen solid within 10 minutes. But Cole's got a habit of doing stupid, noble things." "It wasn't noble," Cole muttered. "Just practical." "Sure it was," Blackwell said with a knowing smile. "Keep telling yourself that." When they finally emerged from the doctor's office, the sun was high and bright. Jacob clutched his medicine bottle like a treasure, his eyes already clearer. Lily skipped ahead, delighted by the town and its bustling activity. Cole watched them with an expression Marion couldn't quite read. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. The rescue, the doctor, the job prospect. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "Don't need repayment," Cole replied, adjusting his hat. "Just need you to keep those kids alive and healthy. That'll be enough." "Still, you've given us a chance we didn't have. That's everything." He looked at her, then really looked at her, and something shifted in his gray eyes. "You've got more fight in you than you think, Marion Doyle. Last night in that storm, you didn't give up, even when it would have been easier. That counts for something." Before Marion could respond, he'd already turned away, leading his horse toward the general store. "We'll pick up supplies, then head for the ranch. Mrs. Thornton doesn't suffer fools or tardiness. Best to arrive before sundown." Marion gathered her children close and followed her heart lighter than it had been in months. Maybe, just maybe, they were going to be all right. What? The Thornton Ranch sprawled across the valley like a small kingdom. Barns and corrals, bunkhouses, and storage sheds all radiating out from the main house that sat on a low rise overlooking the operation. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys, horses whinnied in the pastures. Men called to each other as they worked, their voices carrying clear in the cold air. It looked like life. Purpose. Stability. Everything Marion had lost and desperately needed back. Cole rode straight up to the main house and dismounted, lifting Jacob down carefully. "Stay here," he told Marion. "I'll talk to her first." Her Mrs. Vera Thornton owns the place. Her husband built it, but he died 5 years back. She's run it since and run it well. She's got 3 sons who help manage things, but make no mistake, she's the one in charge. He strode up the steps and knocked firmly. A moment later, the door opened to reveal a tall, broad-shouldered woman in her 60s, steel-gray hair, pulled back in a severe bun, eyes sharp as broken glass. "Cole Trapper," she said in a voice like gravel and honey. "You're late." "Storm delayed me. Had to help some folks." Vera's gaze flicked past Cole to where Marion stood with her children, and her expression hardened fractionally. "I see. And these folks, they part of your responsibilities now." "Might be. That's why I'm here." Vera folded her arms. "Explain." Cole did, keeping it brief and factual, the blizzard, the rescue, the sick children, Marion's need for work. He didn't embellish or plead, just laid out the situation and waited. When he finished, Vera was silent for a long moment, her sharp eyes assessing Marion from head to toe. Then she descended the steps with surprising grace and walked over to stand directly in front of the younger woman. "You're the widow Doyle," she said. It wasn't a question. "Thomas Doyle's wife. I heard about the mine collapse. Terrible business." "Yes, ma'am." Marion managed, fighting the urge to drop her gaze. "And you're looking for work." "Yes, ma'am. I can cook, clean, do laundry, anything you need. I'm a hard worker and I won't complain." "Everyone complains," Vera said dryly. "It's human nature. Question is whether you'll complain while working or complain instead of working." She looked down at Jacob and Lily, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Children need care. They sick." "Jacob has pneumonia," Marion admitted, "but he's getting medicine now. He'll recover." "And you think you can work while nursing a sick child?" "I know I can." Vera's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Confidence? Good. I can use that." She turned back to Cole. "You're vouching for her." "I am." "Why?" Cole met her gaze steadily. "Because she deserves a chance. and because those kids deserve to have their mother not be split up and given to strangers. Something passed between them, some shared understanding that Marion couldn't quite grasp. Finally, Vera nodded once. "All right. You've got a job, Mrs. Doyle. Room and board for you and your children in the workers' cottage behind the main house. You'll help with cooking and cleaning, and once that boy's well enough, he can start learning ranch work if he's interested. Girl too, once she's older." Marion's legs nearly gave out from relief. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much. I won't let you down." "See that you don't," Vera said crisply. "I run a tight ship here. Work hard. Follow the rules, treat people fair, and we'll get along fine. Slack off or cause trouble, and you'll be out faster than you can blink. Clear." "Crystal clear, ma'am." "Good. Cole, get her settled. Show her the cottage and where everything is. Supper's at 6 sharp. Don't be late." With that, Vera swept back into the house, leaving Marion staring after her in dazed gratitude. "Come on," Cole said, already walking toward a small, neat building behind the main house. "Let's get you and the kids inside." The cottage was simple but clean. 2 rooms with a potbelly stove, real beds with quilts, a table and chairs. Compared to the drafty shack Marion had been living in, it looked like a palace. "It's perfect," she whispered, running her hand over the smooth wood of the table. "It's absolutely perfect." Cole set Jacob down on one of the beds and began showing Marion where things were: the pump for water, the storage shed, the privy, the main house kitchen where she'd be working. He spoke efficiently, keeping explanations clear and simple. As he talked, Marion found herself studying him. This hard, closed-off man who'd saved her life without asking for anything in return, who'd vouched for her to a woman who clearly trusted his judgment, who'd given her the first real hope she'd felt since Thomas died. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why did you really do all this?" Cole stopped mid-sentence and looked at her. "Told you already." "Your sister. I know, but there's more to it, isn't there?" He was quiet for so long Marion thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "World's full of people who need help," he said slowly. "Most of them never get it. They just fall through the cracks, disappear. And nobody notices or cares." His jaw tightened. "Figure if I can stop that from happening even just once, then maybe all the times I couldn't stop it won't matter as much." The raw honesty in his voice stole Marion's breath. She'd thought he was just a tough cowboy, all hard edges and practical solutions. But beneath that exterior was someone who cared deeply and painfully about the suffering he saw in the world. Someone who'd been hurt and had decided to use that hurt to help others instead of letting it destroy him. "Well," Marion said softly, "you stopped it this time. You saved us, Mr. Trapper. All 3 of us." Cole shook his head. "I just gave you a chance. You're the one who took it. Remember that." He headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, and Marion—" "Yes." "Welcome to Thornton Ranch. You're safe now." Then he was gone, leaving Marion alone with her children in their new home, tears streaming down her face. But this time, they were tears of relief and gratitude and fragile, impossible hope. They'd survived. Against all odds, through blizzards and despair and her own terrible choices, they'd survived. And tomorrow they would start building a life worth living. Marion woke before dawn to the sound of roosters crowing and men's voices calling out instructions across the yard. For one disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory flooded back warm and sweet as honey. The cottage, the ranch, safety. She sat up carefully, not wanting to wake the children, and looked around the room in the pale pre-dawn light. Jacob was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, his breathing steady and deep. Lily had curled into a tight ball beneath the quilts, her small face relaxed and content. They were safe, fed, warm. The relief was so profound it made Marion's chest ache. She rose quietly and began preparing for her first day of work, washing her face in the basin and braiding her hair back severely. Her dress was patched and faded, but it was clean, and it would have to do. First impressions mattered, and she couldn't afford to give Vera Thornton any reason to regret taking a chance on her. A knock at the door made her jump. When she opened it, a young woman stood there, maybe 20, with dark braids and warm brown eyes, holding a covered basket. "Morning," the woman said cheerfully. "I'm Rosa Martinez. I work in the main house kitchen. Mrs. Thornton sent me to fetch you for breakfast and show you the ropes." "Oh, thank you." Marian glanced back at her sleeping children. Should I bring Jacob and Lily? Nah, let 'em sleep. Kids need rest. I'll have someone check on them in an hour. Rosa's smile was genuine and kind. Come on, Cook gets cranky if we're late. The kitchen was a hive of activity. 3 women moving in practice synchronization, chopping vegetables, tending enormous pots on the massive stove, kneading dough. The heat was almost overwhelming after the cold outside, and the smells made Marian's mouth water. This is Mrs. Doyle, Rosa announced. New hire. The oldest of the 3 women, gray-haired and sturdy as an oak tree, looked Marian up and down with assessing eyes. Martha Jennings, she said briskly. Head cook. You know your way around a kitchen. Yes, ma'am. I've been cooking since I was 12. Good. Can you make biscuits without burning them? Yes, ma'am. Even better. Get yourself an apron from that hook and start on the dough. We're feeding 23 men this morning plus the family. Biscuits need to be ready in 40 minutes. Marian didn't waste time with questions. She tied on the apron, washed her hands, and dove into the work. Her fingers remembered the rhythm, even though it had been months since she'd had proper ingredients to work with flour and butter and salt, kneaded and folded until the dough was just right. Around her, the other women worked with efficient grace. Rosa hummed as she fried bacon. A younger girl introduced as Sarah kept the coffee brewing and the serving platters ready. Martha orchestrated everything, like a general commanding troops, her voice sharp but never cruel. By the time the breakfast bell rang, Marian had produced 4 dozen perfect golden biscuits, and her face was flushed with heat and pride. Not bad, Martha said, which seemed to be high praise based on Rosa's encouraging grin. You'll do. The men filed in for breakfast, ranch hands and cowboys, weathered and hungry, filling the long dining table with noise and laughter. Marian caught glimpses of Cole among them, sitting near the end, eating in silence while the others talked. He looked different in the morning light, less forbidding, more simply tired, like a man who carried weights he couldn't put down. Their eyes met briefly across the room. He nodded once, then returned his attention to his plate. Vera Thornton ate at the head of the table, flanked by her 3 sons, William James and Thomas Jr., all in their 30s, all built like their mother, with the same sharp eyes and strong bones. They talked business while they ate, discussing horses and cattle and fence repairs, their voices overlapping in comfortable familiarity. This was a family, Marian realized, not just by blood, but by work and shared purpose. They'd built something together, something that lasted. She wanted that for her children, desperately. After breakfast, after the dishes were washed and the kitchen cleaned, Martha finally released Marian with instructions to report back for lunch preparations at 10. You got 3 hours. Go check on those kids and get them settled proper. Rosa will show you around later. Marian hurried back to the cottage to find both children awake and exploring their new home with wide-eyed wonder. Jacob was examining the stove with careful hands, while Lily had discovered a rag doll left in a trunk. Mama, Lily ran to her, clutching the doll. Can I keep her? Please. I think she was left here for you to find, Marian said, kneeling down to hug her daughter. What will you name her? Hope, Lily said immediately, and Marian's throat closed with emotion. That's perfect, sweetheart. Jacob wandered over more slowly, still weak, but definitely better than yesterday. Mama, is this really our house now? It is. For how long? As long as we work hard and do our jobs well. Marian smoothed his dark hair back from his forehead. How are you feeling, honey? Tired, but good tired. Not sick tired. Good. Come sit down and I'll fix you some breakfast. Rosa had sent along bread and jam, fresh milk, and some of the bacon from the main house. Simple food, but to children who'd been starving, it was a feast. Marian watched them eat with fierce satisfaction, memorizing every bite, every smile. This was what she'd been fighting for. This moment, this safety. A shadow fell across the doorway. Cole stood there, hat in hand, his expression carefully neutral. Wanted to check in, see if you needed anything. We're fine, Marian said, rising quickly. Thank you for everything. Jacob taking his medicine? Every dose right on schedule. Cole nodded, then looked at the boy. How you feeling, son? Jacob straightened up, trying to look strong. Better, sir. Good. You keep getting better. You might want to come see the horses. Got a new foal born last week. Prettiest little thing you ever saw." The boy's eyes lit up. "Really? Could I?" "When your mama says you're well enough." Cole's gaze shifted to Marion, something unreadable in those gray eyes. "You settling in all right?" "Yes. Everyone's been very kind." "Martha work you too hard?" "No more than I can handle." The corner of Cole's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "She likes you. Told Vera you've got good hands and don't waste time chattering. That's high praise from Martha." Warmth bloomed in Marion's chest. "I'm just trying to earn my keep." "You're doing more than that." Cole settled his hat back on his head, preparing to leave. "Listen, I know you're proud, but if you need anything, anything at all, you ask. Understand?" "I understand. Thank you, Mr. Trapper." "Cole," he corrected. "Just Cole." "All right. Cole." Something shifted in the air between them. Some subtle recognition that they'd moved beyond stranger and rescuer into something more complex. Not quite friends, not yet, but no longer distant either. After he left, Lily looked up from her doll with curious eyes. "Mama, is Mr. Cole going to be our papa now?" The question startled a laugh from Marion. "No, sweetheart. He's just a friend. Someone who helped us. But he looks at you the way Papa used to look at you." "Lily." "He does," Jacob agreed solemnly. "Soft, like you're something precious." Marion's face heated. "That's enough of that talk. Finish your breakfast." But later alone, while the children napped, she found herself thinking about Cole Trapper. About the way he'd appeared from the storm, like Providence itself. The way he'd refused to leave her behind, refused to let her give up. The way he looked at her children, not with pity, but with a kind of fierce protectiveness that made her heart ache. She'd loved Thomas, loved him deeply and truly, and his death had carved a hole in her chest that still hadn't healed. The thought of ever caring for someone else felt like betrayal. But Cole wasn't asking her to care. He was just there, steady, reliable, a shelter in the storm. And maybe that was enough for now. The days fell into rhythm. Marion rose before dawn to work in the kitchen, preparing meals for the ranch hands and the Thornton family. She learned the way Martha liked things organized, the way Rosa could make anyone laugh, even on the hardest days, the way young Sarah looked up to the older women with hero worship in her eyes. She learned that Vera Thornton was harder than granite, but fair as Solomon, that her sons were good men who treated their workers with respect, that the ranch ran like a well-oiled machine, because everyone knew their role and did it without complaint. She learned the rhythm of ranch life, the early mornings and long days, the constant work of feeding and caring for animals and people, the way weather dictated everything, the fierce pride everyone took in keeping the operation running smoothly. And slowly, carefully, she learned about Cole Trapper. He was the best horseman on the ranch, maybe the best in the territory. Men twice his age deferred to his judgment about training and breeding. He could gentle the wildest Mustang with patience, and quiet words could spot lameness or illness before anyone else noticed. He kept to himself, mostly sleeping in the bunkhouse, but eating alone more often than not. The other men respected him but didn't seem to know him well. He never drank, never gambled, never went into town on Saturday nights with the rest of them. "He's been drifting for years," Rosa told Marion one afternoon as they peeled potatoes together. "Never stays anywhere longer than a season or two. Vera's been trying to convince him to settle here permanent, but I don't think he knows how." "Why does he drift?" Rosa shrugged. "Some men just do. Lost something maybe, or running from something. Cole doesn't talk about his past." She gave Marion a knowing look. "But he talks about you." "What?" "To Vera. Asked her twice this week how you were doing, if you needed anything. That's not like him. He usually doesn't involve himself in people's business." Marion's hand stilled in the potato water. "He's just being kind." "Maybe, or maybe it's something more." Rosa's smile was gentle. "Would that be so bad if it was something more?" "My husband has been dead less than a year," Marion said quietly. "It wouldn't be proper." "Well, proper doesn't keep you warm at night, and that man looks at you like you hung the moon." "Rosa." "I'm just saying, life's short, especially out here. When something good comes along, maybe you don't question it too hard. Maybe you just hold on." The conversation haunted Marion for days. She found herself watching Cole when she thought no one would notice the way he moved with unconscious grace, the way he was gentle with the horses, but firm with men who needed correcting, the way he always had time for Jacob's endless questions and Lily's shy smiles. Jacob had recovered quickly under the doctor's care and proper nutrition. Within 2 weeks, he was begging to help with ranch work. Cole took him under his wing, teaching him to curry horses and clean tack, explaining the difference between a gelding and a stallion, showing him how to read an animal's mood from its ears and tail. "Your boy's got good instincts," Cole told Marion one evening as they walked back from the barn together, Jacob having finally gone inside for supper. "Natural way with horses. He keeps working hard. He could make a decent hand someday." "He worships you," Marion said softly. "Talks about you constantly. Cole said this, and Cole taught me that." Cole looked uncomfortable. "Just teaching him useful skills." "You're doing more than that. You're giving him something to hope for. A future he can picture." Marion stopped walking, forcing him to face her. "He hasn't had that since Thomas died. Neither have I." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Cole's gray eyes searched her face in the dimming light. "What are you saying, Marion?" "I'm saying thank you for not just saving our lives, but giving us reasons to live them." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm saying I don't know how to repay that kind of debt." "There's no debt." Cole's voice was rough. "I told you before, I know what you told me, but that doesn't change what I feel." Marion's hands twisted together. "You could have ridden past us that night. Most men would have. You didn't. And every day since you've gone out of your way to help us to make sure we're all right, to give Jacob purpose and Lily joy, that's not nothing, Cole. That's everything." He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I couldn't ride past. That's the truth of it. Saw you out there in the storm, and something just grabbed hold. Couldn't leave you. Wouldn't have been able to live with myself." "Why, don't know. Just knew you were meant to survive, you and those kids." He looked away, his profile sharp against the sunset. "And maybe I was meant to be the one to make sure that happened." Marion's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This careful, closed-off man was offering her something precious. Not promises or declarations, but simple honesty. The truth of what he felt, even if he didn't fully understand it himself. "I'm glad it was you," she said quietly. "In the storm. I'm glad you were the one who found us." Cole's eyes met hers, and for just a moment the walls came down. She saw loneliness there, and pain, and something that might have been hope struggling to survive in frozen ground. Then Lily's voice rang out from the cottage. "Mama Jacob's stealing my doll, Cam." And the moment shattered. Cole stepped back, the walls slamming back into place. "Better go handle that," he said gruffly. "Yes, I suppose I should." Marion didn't move immediately. "Cole, yeah. Will you join us for supper sometime? The children would love it, and—" She took a breath. "And so would I." He studied her for a long weighing moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Yeah, all right. I'd like that." As she walked back to the cottage, Marion's heart felt lighter than it had in months. Maybe Rosa was right. Maybe when something good came along, you didn't question it. You just held on and hoped it would last. Spring came slowly to Montana, melting the snow in fits and starts, turning the ground to mud, and then to grass as the days lengthened. The ranch exploded with activity. New foals being born, cattle being moved to fresh pastures, fences needing repair after the brutal winter. Marion threw herself into the work with fierce dedication. She rose earlier, stayed later, volunteered for extra tasks. She wanted to prove herself indispensable, wanted to earn not just her place but respect. And slowly, steadily, she did. Martha began trusting her with more complex dishes. Vera nodded approvingly when she walked through the kitchen and saw Marion working efficiently. The ranch hands stopped being careful around her and started joking the way they joked with Rosa, which meant they saw her as one of them now. Cole kept his promise about supper, joining them once a week, at first then twice, then so regularly it became expected. He'd show up at the cottage door with his hat in his hands, and Lily would shriek with delight and throw herself at his legs, while Jacob tried to maintain dignity before inevitably peppering Cole with questions. Those evenings became precious to Marion. She'd cook simple meals, nothing fancy, just good food shared with people who mattered, and they'd eat together while the children chattered, and Cole offered occasional dry observations that made them all laugh. She learned things about him in those quiet hours. That he'd grown up in Texas, that he'd left home at 16 after his father died, that he'd worked every kind of job imaginable while drifting from place to place, that he liked strong coffee and hated turnips and could play harmonica well enough to make Lily dance. She learned that beneath the hard exterior was a man who'd been hurt and had chosen to be kind anyway. A man who'd seen the worst of humanity but still believed in helping when he could. And she learned that she was falling for him. Not the wild, passionate love she'd felt for Thomas when they were young and everything seemed possible. This was something quieter, deeper, built on respect and shared understanding, on watching him teach her son patience and make her daughter laugh on the way he looked at her like she was strong instead of broken. It terrified her. One evening in late April, after the children had gone to bed, Cole lingered at the door instead of leaving immediately, like he usually did. "Something on your mind?" Marian asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yeah, maybe." He shifted his weight uncharacteristically uncertain. "There's a dance in town Saturday. Community thing. Vera's making everyone go, says it's good for morale." He cleared his throat. "Thought maybe you'd want to come. With me." Marian's breath caught. Is this? "I'm asking if you'd accompany me to a dance," Cole said bluntly, "as my guest. If that's something you'd be interested in." 1,000 thoughts raced through Marian's mind. It had only been 10 months since Thomas died. People would talk, they'd judge. They'd say she was disrespecting her husband's memory by courting again so soon. But Thomas was gone, and she was still here, still alive, still deserving of happiness if she could find it. "Yes," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'd like that very much." Cole's shoulders relaxed fractionally. "Good. That's good." He settled his hat back on his head, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I'll pick you up at 6. After he left, Marian leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. She was really doing this, moving forward, letting herself hope for something more than just survival. It felt like betrayal and salvation all at once. The night of the dance, Rosa showed up at the cottage with a dress over her arm, pale blue cotton with a high collar and simple lines. Nothing fancy, but clean and pressed and beautiful. "From Vera," Rosa explained, hanging it carefully on a hook. "She said you'd need something appropriate, and this was hers when she was younger. Should fit you just fine." Marian ran her fingers over the fabric tears stinging her eyes. Such a small kindness, but it meant everything. "Please thank her for me." "Thank her yourself?" Rosa grinned. "She'll be there tonight watching like a hawk to make sure everyone behaves, including Cole." "Cole always behaves. Around you, maybe. Around other folks, he's been known to have opinions delivered with his fists when the situation calls for it." Rosa's expression turned serious. "He's a good man, Marian, one of the best I've known, but he's been alone a long time. Be patient with him." "I will." When Cole arrived precisely at 6, freshly shaved and wearing clean clothes that must have cost him a week's wages, Marian felt suddenly shy. He looked at her in the blue dress like she was something miraculous, his gray eyes wide with an emotion he couldn't quite hide. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you. You look very handsome." They stood there awkwardly for a moment before Jacob broke the tension by announcing, "Rosa's taking us to watch the horses tonight. She says there might be new kittens in the barn." "You two mind Rosa," Marian instructed, kissing both children, "and go to bed when she tells you." "We will, Mama," Lily promised solemnly. "Have fun dancing with Cole." The ride into town was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence. Cole drove the wagon with easy competence, while Marian sat beside him, acutely aware of every place their bodies almost touched. The spring air was soft and sweet, carrying the scent of new grass and wildflowers. "Nervous?" Cole asked finally. "A little," Marian admitted. "It's been a long time since I've been to a dance, and people will talk." "Let them." His voice was firm. "You've got nothing to be ashamed of. Thomas hasn't been gone a year. Thomas would want you to be happy." Cole glanced at her, his expression serious. I didn't know the man, but any husband worth having would want his wife to keep living after he was gone. Not just surviving, actually living. Marion's throat tightened. How do you know what he'd want? Because if I loved someone enough to marry them, I'd want them to have every happiness this world could give, even if I couldn't be the one to give it to them anymore. The simple honesty of it broke something open in Marion's chest. She reached over and took Cole's hand, squeezing gently. He squeezed back his calloused fingers, warm and strong, around hers. They didn't let go until they reached the town hall. The dance was in full swing when they arrived, music spilling out into the street lanterns, glowing warm against the gathering darkness. People laughing and talking in clusters. Cole helped Marion down from the wagon, keeping his hand at her elbow as they entered. Eyes turned toward them immediately. Marion felt the weight of those stares, heard the whispers starting. The widow Doyle and the drifter trapper. Wasn't it too soon? Wasn't it improper? What would people think? Cole must have sensed her tension because he bent close to murmur in her ear. Hold your head up. You've got every right to be here. So she did. Lifted her chin and walked into that hall like she belonged there, Cole solid and steady at her side. Vera appeared almost immediately, regal in dark purple silk. Marion, you look lovely. That dress suits you. Her sharp eyes moved to Cole. Try to keep your scowling to a minimum tonight. You're here to enjoy yourself. Yes, ma'am, Cole said dryly. Good. Now go dance before the gossips have too much time to work themselves up. The fiddle music swirled around them as Cole led Marion onto the floor. His hand settled at her waist, careful and respectful, while his other hand clasped hers. They began to move slowly, at first finding the rhythm together. I'm not much of a dancer, Cole warned. You're doing fine. Step on your feet yet. Not once. He smiled a real smile, rare and precious as gold. Give me time. But he didn't step on her feet. He guided her smoothly through the dance, and Marion let herself relax into it, into the music and the movement and the feeling of being held by someone who cared. Other couples swirled around them, but she barely noticed. All her attention was focused on the man in front of her, this unlikely savior who'd become so much more. When the song ended, Cole didn't immediately release her. They stood there for a moment, caught in the intimacy of the dance, the rest of the world fading away. Thank you, Marion whispered. For this. For everything. Marion? Whatever Cole was going to say was interrupted by a loud, slurred voice from across the room. Well, well, if it ain't the grieving widow dancing like her husband's been dead 10 years instead of 10 months. Marion's blood ran cold. She turned to see Frank Carson, one of Thomas's former co-workers from the mine, swaying drunkenly near the refreshment table, his face twisted with malicious satisfaction. Frank, don't, someone warned, but Carson ignored them. What's the matter, Marion? One man not enough for you. Had to go find yourself a new one before the old one was even cold. His laugh was ugly. Or maybe Thomas wasn't much of a man to begin with if you forgot him so quick. Cole moved before Marion could react, crossing the distance in 3 strides. His hand shot out and grabbed Carson by the shirt front, lifting the drunk man onto his toes. You're going to apologize, Cole said, his voice deadly quiet. Right now. Or what? Carson sneered despite the fear in his eyes. You'll hit me. Go ahead. Everyone already knows you're nothing but a... He didn't get to finish. Cole's fist connected with his jaw in one efficient motion, and Carson dropped like a sack of grain. The room went silent. Cole stood over the fallen man, breathing hard, his knuckles bleeding. Anyone else have something to say about Mrs. Doyle? His gaze swept the room, challenging. No. Good. He turned back to Marion, his expression softening. You all right? Marion nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. Cole had defended her honor without hesitation, had made it clear to everyone that she was under his protection. The significance of that wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Vera appeared at Cole's elbow, looking more amused than angry. Get him out of here before he wakes up and starts trouble again. She looked at Marion. You holding up? Yes, ma'am. Good. Don't let fools like Carson ruin your evening, Vera's voice carried across the room. Anyone who has a problem with how Mrs. Doyle chooses to live her life can take it up with me directly. Otherwise, I suggest you mind your own business and let a good woman find a little happiness. She's earned it." The tension in the room eased. People returned to their conversations, and the music started up again. But something fundamental had shifted. Marian had been claimed, publicly defended, validated. She was no longer just the tragic widow. She was Cole Trapper's woman under the protection of the Thornton Ranch. And strangely, that felt like freedom. They didn't stay much longer after that. Cole drove them back to the ranch in silence, his jaw tight with residual anger. When they reached the cottage, he helped Marian down but didn't immediately release her waist. "I'm sorry," he said gruffly, "for hitting him, for causing a scene. Don't apologize. He deserved it." "Maybe, but I shouldn't have let him get to me. Shouldn't have— Oh, Cole." Marian placed her hand over his heart, feeling it beat hard and fast beneath her palm. "Thank you for standing up for me. No one's done that in a very long time." His hand covered hers, holding it there. "I'll always stand up for you, Marian. Always. You need to know that." The intensity in his voice made her shiver. This was a promise, a vow, and she felt the weight of it settle around her shoulders like a warm cloak. "I know," she whispered. "I believe you." They stood there in the moonlight, hands clasped, something unspoken but powerful passing between them. Then Cole stepped back, reluctantly breaking the spell. "I should go. Let you get some rest. Will you come for supper tomorrow?" "Yeah, I'll be here." After he left, Marian sat in the darkness of the cottage, listening to her children breathe softly in sleep, and let herself acknowledge the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She was falling in love with Cole Trapper, and God help her, she thought he might be falling in love with her too. The realization didn't frighten her as much as she'd expected. Instead, it settled over Marian like the first warm day of spring. Inevitable, natural right. She'd fought it for weeks, telling herself it was too soon, that she owed Thomas's memory more time, that people would judge her. But sitting there in the quiet darkness, she understood that grief and love didn't cancel each other out. She could mourn the husband she'd lost while opening her heart to the possibility of something new. The question was whether Cole felt the same way. Over the next few weeks, that question became harder to ignore. Cole's visits to the cottage grew more frequent, his excuses thinner. He'd show up to check on repairs that didn't need checking, or discuss Jacob's progress with the horses, when everyone knew he just wanted to be there. He'd linger after supper helping wash dishes, while Lily climbed into his lap to tell elaborate stories about her doll, and Jacob showed him drawings of horses he'd sketched. Those evenings felt like a family, and the longing that created in Marian's chest was almost painful. One afternoon in early May, as Marian was hanging laundry behind the cottage, Rosa appeared with a knowing smile and a basket of fresh bread. "So," Rosa said, without preamble, "when are you two going to stop dancing around it and just admit what everyone already knows?" Marian nearly dropped the sheet she was pinning. "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, please. Cole Trapper looks at you like you're the only woman in Montana, and you watch him like he hung the stars. It's not exactly subtle." Rosa set down her basket and began helping with the laundry. "The whole ranch is taking bets on when he'll finally propose." "Rosa," Marian's face flamed, we're not, it's too soon." "Says who? Some arbitrary mourning period that makes other people comfortable." Rosa's voice softened. "Marian, honey, you've been through hell. You nearly died. Your children nearly died. You have every right to grab happiness with both hands when it shows up. But Thomas would want you to be loved and cared for. You know that." Rosa pinned a pillowcase with practiced efficiency. "Besides, Cole's not just offering you romance. He's offering your children a father's stability protection. Those are real things that matter." Marian's hands stilled in the laundry basket. "What if he doesn't feel the same way? What if I'm reading too much into kindness?" "Then you're blind as well as stubborn," Rosa said bluntly. "That man is in love with you, Marian. Head over heels, can't think straight, would walk through fire kind of love. Everyone sees it but you." Before Marian could respond, a commotion from the front of the ranch house drew their attention. Raised voices, the sound of a wagon arriving, and then Vera's sharp tone cutting through the noise. "What now?" Rosa muttered, abandoning the laundry to investigate. Marian followed, wiping her hands on her apron. A travel-worn carriage sat in front of the main house, and stepping down from it was a woman who made Marian's breath catch. She was beautiful, tall, and elegant, in expensive traveling clothes, with golden hair swept up in elaborate curls and eyes the color of cornflowers. She looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion plate completely out of place on a working ranch, and she was looking at Cole with an expression of wounded betrayal. 3 years, Cole, the woman said, her voice trembling. 3 years without a word. Do you have any idea what I went through? What people said? Cole stood frozen, his face gone pale. Catherine, what are you doing here? What am I doing here? Catherine's laugh was brittle. You disappear in the middle of the night with no explanation, no goodbye, nothing. You leave me waiting at the church like a fool, and you ask what I'm doing here. Marion's stomach dropped. Church. Waiting. This woman had expected to marry Cole. The ranch hands had stopped working, all eyes on the unfolding drama. Vera stood on the porch with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable, and Cole looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. That was a long time ago, he said quietly. A different life. Was it? Catherine took a step closer, tears shimmering in her eyes. Because it doesn't feel that way to me. It feels like yesterday. It feels like you ripped my heart out and never looked back. Catherine, I'm sorry. I am. But what we had, it wasn't real. You wanted someone I couldn't be. I wanted you, the real you. I loved you, Cole. You loved the idea of me. The respectable rancher's son who'd settle down and give you a comfortable life. But that's not who I am. I tried to be that person and it nearly killed me. Catherine's face crumpled. So you just ran, couldn't even face me long enough to say goodbye. Cole's jaw worked, and for the first time since Marion had known him, he looked uncertain, guilty. I was a coward. You deserved better than that. Better than me. Well, I tracked you down to tell you that I forgive you, Catherine said, her voice gaining strength, and to ask you to come home. My father's expanded the ranch. There's a place for you there. A good life. We could start over, Cole. Forget the past and build something together. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marion stood rooted to the spot, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. This beautiful, sophisticated woman from Cole's past was offering him everything, forgiveness, a future, a chance to go back to the life he'd left behind. Why would he choose a widow with 2 children and nothing to offer? But hardship. Cole's eyes found Marion's across the yard, and the raw emotion in them made her knees weak. Then he turned back to Catherine with something like sadness on his weathered face. I can't go back, he said quietly. That life never fit me right, and you know it. I'm sorry for hurting you, sorry for being a coward, but I'm not the man you need, Catherine. I never was. Is it her? Catherine's gaze snapped to Marion sharp with understanding. That woman standing there, is that why you won't come home? Leave her out of this. Answer the question, Cole. Are you choosing some widow over me, over everything we could have had? Cole's expression hardened. Watch your tone. Marion's been through more hell than you can imagine, and she's worth 10 of anyone who'd judge her for trying to survive. The words should have made Marion's heart soar, but instead they triggered a cascade of doubt. Was she really worth defending? She'd nearly given up her children, had let desperation and fear drive her to the edge of something unforgivable. What if Cole learned the full truth of how broken she'd been? Would he still look at her the same way? I need to go, Marion heard herself say, her voice barely audible. The children, I need to check on the children. She fled before anyone could stop her, half running back to the cottage with hot tears streaming down her face. Behind her, she could hear Rosa calling her name, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. The walls were closing in, all her carefully constructed hope crumbling like sand. She'd been a fool to think this could work, to think she deserved someone like Cole. Inside the cottage, she pressed her back against the door and tried to breathe through the panic. Jacob looked up from the book he was reading, concern immediate on his young face. Mama, what's wrong? Nothing, honey. I need a moment. But Jacob wasn't fooled. He'd learned to read his mother's moods too well during the hard times. Is it Cole? Did something happen to Cole? No, he's fine. Everything's fine. Lily appeared from the bedroom, clutching her doll. Is Cole coming for supper tonight? Marion's throat closed. I don't know, sweetheart. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find not Cole, but an older woman she didn't recognize, thin and severe in black mourning clothes, with Thomas's eyes staring out of a harder face. "You're Marion," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. Who are you?" "Constance Doyle, Thomas's aunt." The woman's lip curled. "His father's sister. I've come a long way to meet the woman who replaced my nephew so quickly." Marion's blood turned to ice. "I haven't replaced—" "Don't lie to me. The whole territory's talking about it. How the widow Doyle took up with some drifter before her husband was cold in the ground. How she's gallivanting around town going to dances, making a spectacle of herself." Constance's voice dripped with venom. "Thomas worshipped you, worked himself to death trying to provide for you, and this is how you honor his memory." "You don't know anything about my marriage or what I've been through," Marion said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Thomas died trying to support us, yes, and I nearly died trying to keep our children alive after. I did what I had to do to survive. By throwing yourself at the first man who showed you kindness, by forgetting the vows you made to my nephew." Constance stepped closer, her face twisted with righteous fury. "You're a disgrace. Thomas deserved better than a wife who couldn't even mourn him properly." The words found every raw wound in Marion's heart and tore them open. Because wasn't there truth in them? Hadn't she moved on too quickly? Hadn't she let herself fall for Cole when she should have been honoring Thomas's memory? "I loved your nephew," Marion whispered. "I still love him. His death nearly destroyed me." "Then prove it. Send that drifter away. Stop this shameful behavior. Be the widow Thomas deserves." "And what about what my children deserve?" Marion's voice rose despite herself. "A mother so consumed by grief she can't feed them, can't protect them. Would Thomas want that?" "Thomas would want you to remember him," Constance snapped, "not replace him with some nobody cowboy." "Get off my porch," Marion said, her voice shaking. "Now. Or what?" "You'll have your lover throw me off, prove my point for me." Constance's smile was cruel. "I've already written to the family back east about your behavior. They'll know what kind of woman you really are, and so will everyone else." She swept away, leaving Marion trembling in the doorway. Behind her, Jacob's small voice asked, "Mama, who was that lady?" "No one important, honey." But the damage was done. The doubts that had been whispers were now screams. Was Constance right? Was Marion dishonoring Thomas by allowing herself to care for Cole? She'd loved her husband, loved him deeply. His death had carved out a piece of her soul, and here she was barely 10 months later falling for another man. What kind of wife did that make her? The questions haunted her through the rest of the day and into the evening. When Cole appeared at supper time as expected, Marion couldn't meet his eyes. "Heard about the visitors," he said quietly, standing in the doorway like he wasn't sure he'd be welcome. "Both of them." "Yes." "Want to talk about it?" "No." Marion focused on stirring the pot on the stove, her movements mechanical. "Actually, I think maybe you shouldn't come around so much anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. When Cole spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "That what you want or what you think you should want? Does it matter?" "Yeah, Marion, it matters a hell of a lot." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Look at me." She didn't want to see the hurt in his eyes or the questions, but he deserved at least that much honesty, so she turned to face him. "Catherine's right." She said the words tearing themselves from her throat. "I'm just a widow with nothing to offer. You could go back east, have a real life, marry someone who's not broken and desperate and—" "Stop." Cole crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Stop right there. You think I give a damn about Catherine or what she's offering? I left that life behind for a reason, Marion, because it wasn't real. It was pretty and comfortable and absolutely hollow." "And what's this?" Marion gestured helplessly around the small cottage. What are we? "You're real. This is real." His gray eyes burned with intensity. "You're strong and brave, and you've survived things that would have broken most people. You're a good mother, a hard worker, and the first person in years who's made me want to stop drifting and build something lasting. But Thomas was your husband, and you loved him. I know that. I'm not asking you to forget him or stop loving him. Cole's voice softened. But he's gone, Marion, and you're still here. You're allowed to keep living. You're allowed to be happy again. His aunt said I'm disgracing his memory. His aunt is a bitter woman who's trying to make you as miserable as she is. Cole's jaw tightened. Don't let her poison what we have. Don't let fear win. Marion wanted to believe him, wanted to be strong enough to ignore the whispers and the judgment and claim her happiness without apology. But the weight of expectation was crushing. What if I can't? She whispered. What if I'm not brave enough? Cole's hand slid from her shoulders to cup her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Then I'll be brave enough for both of us, until you remember how strong you really are. The tenderness in his voice broke something in Marion. She leaned into his touch, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know what to do. Everyone's watching, judging. The whole town thinks I'm a terrible person for moving on so quickly. The whole town can go to hell, of course, Cole said fiercely. What matters is what you want, what makes you happy, what's best for your children. He paused, his thumbs brushing away her tears. Do I make you happy, Marion? Yes, she breathed. God help me, yes. Then that's all that matters. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Marion didn't move. His lips brushed hers, gentle, questioning, careful. She responded hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty, her hands coming up to grip his shirt. This was real. This connection, this feeling, this man who'd saved her life and refused to let her surrender. Whatever anyone else thought, whatever judgment they passed, this was hers, and it was precious, and she was tired of being ashamed of wanting it. The kiss broke naturally, and Cole rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. I love you, he said quietly. No, it's fast. No, it's complicated. But I love you, Marion. You and those kids. Want to build a life with you if you'll let me. Marion's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment she had to choose. The safe path of continued mourning and social approval, or the uncertain path of happiness and judgment. Before she could answer, the cottage door burst open, and Jacob rushed in, his face streaked with tears. Mama, there's a man at the bunkhouse saying terrible things about you, about Cole. Everyone's listening, and Cole was moving before Jacob finished his expression, hardening into something dangerous. Stay here, he told Marion. Lock the door. Cole, wait. But he was already gone, striding toward the bunkhouse with his hands clenched into fists. Marion grabbed her shawl and followed, despite his instruction, Jacob at her heels. She couldn't let him fight her battles alone. Not anymore. A crowd had gathered near the bunkhouse, and in the center stood Frank Carson, the man Cole had punched at the dance. He was clearly drunk again, his face flushed and angry as he held court. Nothing but a whore who couldn't even wait for her husband's grave to settle before spreading her legs for the first man who, the rest was cut off as Cole's fist connected with Carson's jaw for the second time in a month. The drunk man went down hard, blood spraying from his split lip. Get up, Cole growled. Get up so I can put you down again. Carson struggled to his feet, swaying. Prove my point, why don't you, violent drifter and a desperate widow? Perfect match. This time when Cole moved forward, Marion caught his arm. Don't, he's not worth it. He's slandering you. Let him. Marion stepped past Cole to face Carson directly, her voice carrying across the yard. You want to call me names? Fine. I've been called worse. You want to judge me for trying to survive after my husband died? Go ahead. I'm done caring what small-minded, bitter men think. She turned slowly, addressing the entire crowd that had gathered. Ranch hands, workers from town people she'd served food to and worked alongside for months. All of them watching, waiting to see what she'd say. My husband died in that mine, Marion said, her voice steady and clear. The company stole our benefits. I had no money, no food, no way to keep my children alive. I walked them into a blizzard, fully intending to give them away so they wouldn't starve to death. And Cole Trapper. This man you're all so quick to judge, he saved us. Saved all three of us when he could have ridden past and left us to die. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, but Marion wasn't done. He got my son medicine when I couldn't afford it. He vouched for me so I could get work. He's been nothing but honorable and kind, and if that makes him somehow less of a man in your eyes, then you're all fools. Her voice rose with passion. And if loving him makes me a bad woman or a disgrace to Thomas's memory, then so be it. Because I refuse to apologize for choosing life over grief, for choosing hope over despair, for taking a chance on happiness when God knows I've earned it. Silence blanketed the yard. Then from the porch of the main house, Vera Thornton began to clap. Slowly at first, then with increasing emphasis. Rosa joined in, then Martha, then the other women, and gradually the men followed until the entire ranch was applauding. Marion stood there, stunned, tears streaming freely down her face. Carson spat blood on the ground and staggered away muttering curses, but no one paid him any attention. All eyes were on Marion and Cole. Cole stepped up beside her, his hand finding hers and gripping tight. "That brave enough for you?" he asked softly. "I'm terrified," Marion admitted. "Good. Me too." He turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying. "I'm going to marry this woman soon as she'll have me. Anyone got a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Otherwise, I suggest you all get back to work." There was a moment of frozen shock, and then Jacob's voice rang out clear and excited. "You're going to be our new papa." Cole looked down at the boy, his hard expression softening. "If that's all right with you." "Yes." Jacob threw himself at Cole's legs. "Yes, yes, yes." Lily came running from where Rosa had been watching her, her small face split in a huge grin. "Does that mean we're going to be a real family?" "We already are a real family, sweetheart," Cole said, scooping her up. "But yeah, we'll make it official." Marion watched the man she loved hold her children, saw the fierce protectiveness in his face, the gentleness in his touch, the absolute certainty in his eyes, and knew she was making the right choice. Not the easy choice, not the one that would please everyone, but the right one for her and her children. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll marry you, Cole Trapper." He set Lily down carefully and pulled Marion into his arms, kissing her in front of God and the entire ranch and anyone else who cared to watch. This wasn't a tentative questioning kiss like before. This was a claiming a promise, a declaration that they belonged to each other now and the world could adjust. When they finally broke apart, Marion was laughing and crying at the same time, her heart so full it hurt. Vera appeared beside them, her stern face cracked with what might have been a smile. "About damn time. I'll host the wedding here at the ranch. Give you 2 weeks to get things in order." "2 weeks?" Marion gasped. "That's not enough time to—" "It's plenty of time," Vera interrupted. "No point dragging it out and giving the gossips more ammunition. Besides, Cole's wanted to marry you since February. Might as well make it official before he wears a hole in my porch from all his pacing." Cole had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Wasn't pacing." "You absolutely were," Rosa said, appearing with a broad grin. "We all saw it. Man was a mess." The gathering dissolved into celebration, people congratulating them, making plans, offering help. But through it all, Marion held tight to Cole's hand and felt the rightness of this choice settle deep in her bones. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the excitement had faded, Cole sat with Marion on the cottage steps under a blanket of stars. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. "It's going to be hard. People are going to talk for a while." "Let them talk." Marion leaned against his shoulder. "I spent too long caring what people thought, too long trying to fit into boxes that didn't fit. I'm done with that. What changed your mind earlier? You were ready to push me away." "You did, and Jacob and Lily." She turned to look at him in the starlight. "When Jacob asked if you were going to be their new papa, the joy on his face, that's what matters, Cole. Not what Thomas's aunt thinks or what the town gossips say. My children's happiness. My happiness. That's what I'm choosing." Cole's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I'm going to be a good father to them. I swear it." "I know you will. They already love you." "And you," his voice was uncertain, "you love me or just grateful?" Marion took his face in her hands, making sure he could see the truth in her eyes. "I love you, Cole Trapper. Not because you saved us, though you did. Not because you're offering security, though you are. I love you because you're good and kind, and you see me as strong when I feel weak. Because you make my children laugh, and you hold me when I cry. Because you're real and honest, and you make me want to be braver than I thought I could be." His kiss was answer enough, deep and passionate and full of promises neither of them could speak yet, but both understood. When they finally pulled apart, Marian was breathless and grinning like a girl. 2 weeks, she said. Can't believe we're doing this in 2 weeks. Could do it tomorrow if you wanted, Cole said with a rare smile. Already waited long enough? 2 weeks is fine. Gives me time to make a dress plan a proper ceremony. Besides, Lily would never forgive me if she didn't get to pick flowers. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch horses shifting in their stalls, the wind through the grass, the distant call of an owl. Catherine left this afternoon, Cole said eventually. Took the next stage east, said she hoped I knew what I was doing. Do you... Yeah. His voice was certain. For the first time in my life, I absolutely know what I'm doing. I'm building a home, a real one, with you. Marian's throat tightened with emotion. Thank you. For what? For not riding past us in the storm, for giving us a chance, for loving us. Cole pulled her closer, his cheek resting against her hair. Thank you for being brave enough to accept help, for not giving up, for letting me love you. They stayed there until the night grew cold and the stars wheeled overhead, two broken people who'd found each other in a blizzard and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt, hard days when the past tried to pull them back, but they would face it together. And that made all the difference. The 2 weeks that followed passed in a blur of preparation and barely contained excitement. Marian worked her regular shifts in the kitchen while somehow also planning a wedding, and the contradiction of it, the ordinary mixed with the extraordinary, made everything feel both surreal and deeply, wonderfully real. Rosa appointed herself chief wedding coordinator, bustling around the ranch with lists and ideas and an infectious enthusiasm that swept everyone up in its wake. Martha grudgingly agreed to bake the wedding cake, though she made a great show of complaining about the extra work. Vera directed operations with her usual iron efficiency, transforming the main house's large sitting room into a proper venue for a ceremony. And Cole went about his work with a quiet contentment that the other ranch hands noticed immediately. Never seen him smile so much, one of the older cowboys remarked to Marian as she served breakfast one morning. Been working alongside Cole for 3 months now, and I've seen that man crack maybe 2 grins. This week alone, he's smiled more than in all the time before combined. Marian felt warmth bloom in her chest. She'd noticed it too, the way Cole's shoulders had relaxed, the way he laughed more easily, the way he looked at her like she was something precious every time their paths crossed during the day. The children were beside themselves with anticipation. Jacob followed Cole everywhere, asking endless questions about what it meant to have a new father, whether he should call him Pa or Papa or Dad, whether they'd all have the same last name now. Cole answered each question with patient seriousness, never dismissing the boy's concerns. You call me whatever feels right to you, Cole told Jacob one evening as they worked together in the barn. And yeah, you'll be Jacob Trapper after the wedding, same as your mama and Lily. We'll be a real family in every way that matters. What about my real pa? Jacob asked quietly, his small hand stilling on the curry brush. Will you be mad if I still remember him? Cole set down his own brush and knelt to Jacob's level, his gray eyes intense. Listen to me, son. Thomas Doyle was your father, and he loved you. Nothing changes that. I'm not trying to replace him or make you forget him. I'm honored to get to be the one who takes care of you now, who gets to watch you grow up and teach you things, and be there when you need me. So I can love you both. Jacob's voice was small and uncertain. That's allowed. That's absolutely allowed. Heart's got room for lots of love. Doesn't mean one cancels out the other. Jacob threw his arms around Cole's neck with such force he nearly knocked them both over. Cole caught him easily, holding the boy close while Jacob cried against his shoulder. Not sad tears, but the kind that came from relief and joy and the overwhelming comfort of being understood. Watching from the barn doorway, Marian had to turn away to hide her own tears. This man, this wonderful, unexpected man, was going to be such a good father to her children, better than she'd dared to hope for. Lily was less complicated in her excitement. She'd already decided Cole was her new papa and told anyone who would listen about the wedding. Rosa made her a flower crown to practice with, and Lily wore it everywhere, even to bed, until the flowers wilted and had to be gently removed. I'm going to throw petals, Lily announced importantly to anyone who came near. Aunt Rosa says that's very important work, and I have to take it seriously. Aunt Rosa is absolutely right, Marian agreed, hiding a smile. The dress came together with help from several of the ranch women. It wasn't fancy, just a simple cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, but it was new and clean and made Marian feel pretty for the first time in years. When she tried it on for the final fitting, Rosa actually teared up. Thomas would be happy for you, Rosa said quietly, pinning the hem. Seeing you like this glowing and loved, he'd want this for you, Marian. Marian swallowed hard against the lump in her throat. She'd been thinking about Thomas a lot in the days leading up to the wedding, remembering their own simple ceremony, the hopes they'd had, the life they'd tried to build together. The grief was still there, probably always would be, but it had softened into something she could carry without being crushed by it. I think so too, she whispered. I hope so. The night before the wedding, Cole knocked on the cottage door well past supper time. When Marian opened it, he stood there looking uncomfortable and oddly formal. Bad luck for me to see you tomorrow before the ceremony, Sha, he said. Wanted to give you this tonight. He held out a small wooden box, worn smooth with age. Marian took it carefully and opened it to find a silver ring inside, simple and unadorned, but beautifully made. It was my mother's, Cole said quietly. Only thing I kept when I left home. Been carrying it around for 15 years, never knowing what to do with it. Feels right that you should have it. Marian's vision blurred. Cole, I can't. This is your mother's. And she'd want you to wear it. She always said when I found the right woman I'd know. And Marian, I know. You're it. You're everything. She slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. Thank you, she breathed. I'll treasure it always. Cole pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow, you'll be my wife. Tomorrow. Marian echoed the word, carrying the weight of a promise and a prayer. He kissed her then, slow and deep, and full of all the things they hadn't yet said but would have a lifetime to express. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Better get some sleep, he said roughly. Big day tomorrow. Cole. Marian caught his hand before he could leave. I love you. In case I forget to say it tomorrow with all the chaos. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. His smile was like sunrise. I love you too. Now get inside before I do something improper like carry you off the night before our wedding. Marian laughed and obeyed, watching from the doorway as he walked back toward the bunkhouse. The ring on her finger caught the moonlight, and she twisted it gently, feeling the weight of the commitment she was about to make. Tomorrow. Tomorrow she would marry Cole Trapper and begin a new chapter of her life. The thought should have terrified her, but instead it filled her with a peace so profound it felt like grace. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright with June sunshine pouring down like a blessing. Marian woke to find Lily already up and dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed with her flower crown firmly in place. Is it time yet? Mama, is it time? Almost, sweetheart. Let me get ready first. Rosa arrived early to help with hair and makeup, chattering excitedly while she worked. The whole ranch is decorated. Vera outdid herself. And Martha's cake, Marian, it's beautiful. 3 layers with real sugar flowers. I don't know how she managed it. I'm going to cry through the entire ceremony, Marian predicted, already feeling tears threatening. Good tears, though, Rosa said firmly. Happy tears, the best kind. By the time Marian was dressed and ready, her hands were shaking with nerves and anticipation. She looked at herself in the small mirror, really looked, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked so different, but because she looked alive in a way she hadn't in years. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks flushed, her whole face radiant with hope. You're beautiful, Mama, Jacob said from the doorway, wearing his own new clothes, simple but clean, his hair slicked back with water. Papa would think so too. My real Papa, I mean. Oh, honey. Marian knelt down, not caring if she wrinkled her dress. Come here. Jacob came into her arms, and they held each other for a long moment. I miss him, the boy whispered. Is that okay? To miss him today? It's absolutely okay. I miss him too. But he'd be so proud of you, Jacob, of how strong and brave you've been, and I think, her voice caught. I think he'd be glad we found Cole.
Glad we found someone who'll take care of us and love us. I think so too, Jacob agreed. Then he pulled back with a watery smile. But we should probably go now. Cole's probably nervous. They made their way to the main house where people had gathered from all over, ranch workers, townspeople, neighbors from miles around. The sitting room had been transformed with wildflowers and white ribbons, simple but lovely. Chairs had been arranged in rows, and at the front stood a circuit preacher who rode through twice a year performing ceremonies and baptisms. And beside the preacher stood Cole. He'd cleaned up in a way Marion had never seen, new shirt and vest, hair trimmed, beard neatly shaped. But it was the expression on his face when he saw her that made her breath catch. Pure, unguarded love mixed with awe, as if he couldn't quite believe this was really happening. Vera had insisted on doing things properly, so Rosa walked Marion down the makeshift aisle while Lily scattered flower petals with intense concentration. Jacob walked beside his mother, his small hand gripping hers tightly. When they reached the front, the boy looked up at Cole with serious eyes. "You promised to take care of them," Jacob asked, his voice carrying in the quiet room. "My mama and my sister," Cole knelt down to the boy's level. "I promise, with my life. And you won't leave even when things get hard." "I'm not going anywhere, son. You're stuck with me." Jacob studied him for another long moment, then nodded. "Okay, then you can marry my mama." A ripple of laughter and emotion swept through the gathered crowd. Cole stood and took Marion's hand, and she felt the tremor in his fingers. He was just as nervous as she was, just as overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were doing. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Marion heard the preacher's words as if from a distance, her entire focus on the man standing beside her. Cole's responses were steady and sure, his gray eyes never leaving her face. When it came time for vows, he spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "I promise to love you and protect you and your children for as long as I draw breath, to be faithful and true, to work hard, and provide to be the kind of man you can depend on. I promise to honor the husband you lost by being the best husband I can be, and I promise that from this day forward, you'll never face another storm alone." Marion's tears were flowing freely now, but she managed to speak her own vows without her voice breaking. "I promise to love you with my whole heart, to support you in all things, to build a home and a life with you. I promise to trust you with my children and my future, and I promise that no matter what comes, we'll face it together as a family." The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Cole kissed her with a gentleness that made her heart ache. Around them, people erupted in applause and cheers. Jacob whooped with excitement. Lily tugged on Cole's vest until he picked her up and she planted a wet kiss on his cheek. "You're our papa now," she announced proudly. "That I am little bit," Cole agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "That I am." The celebration that followed was everything a wedding should be: joyful and chaotic and full of love. Martha's cake was indeed magnificent, and the children insisted on having the biggest slices. Music started up, and Cole led Marion onto the floor for the first dance, holding her close, while everyone watched and smiled. "How you feelin', Mrs. Trapper?" he murmured against her hair. "Like the luckiest woman in Montana," she answered honestly. "You?" "Like I finally found home." They danced through several songs. Then Cole danced with Lily, while Jacob watched with barely concealed envy. So Cole danced with him too, teaching the boy the steps while the crowd laughed and applauded. It was imperfect and silly and absolutely perfect. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Marion found herself standing on the porch with Vera, watching the celebration continue inside. "You did good," Vera said without preamble. "That's a good man you married." "The best," Marion agreed. "He'll stay now. Put down roots. I've been trying to get Cole to settle for 2 years, but he always had one foot out the door. Not anymore." Vera's sharp eyes cut to Marion. "You gave him something to stay for." "He gave me something to live for," Marion countered. "I think we saved each other." "That's how the best marriages work." Vera's expression softened fractionally. "My William, God rest him, he saved me too. From a life I didn't want, from expectations that would have crushed me. Gave me this place, this life, these sons. When he died, I thought I'd die too. But you keep going. You honor them by living well." That's what I'm trying to do, Marian said quietly. Live well. Be happy. Raise my children right. You're doing it, and you've got a good partner to do it with. Vera patted Marian's shoulder awkwardly. Welcome to the family, daughter, officially. The word daughter made Marian's throat close with emotion. She'd lost so much her husband, her security, nearly her children, but she'd gained so much more. A new husband who loved her fiercely, a community that had rallied around her, a future that looked bright instead of bleak. Later that night, after the guests had left and the children were tucked into bed at Rosa's cottage for the evening, Cole carried Marian over the threshold of their new home, a small house on ranch property that Vera had quietly made available. It wasn't large, but it was theirs, with a real bedroom and a kitchen and space for the children to grow. Welcome home, wife, Cole said, setting her down gently in the middle of the main room. Welcome home, husband. Marian echoed the words, feeling strange and wonderful on her tongue. They stood there for a moment, suddenly shy with each other, despite everything that had come before. Then Cole reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I'm going to spend every day of my life making sure you never regret this, he promised. I won't regret it. I couldn't. Marian leaned into his touch. You saved us, Cole, in every way a person can be saved. You saved me right back, gave me a reason to stop running, a place to belong. His voice dropped to a whisper. A family to love. He kissed her then, and it was different from all the kisses before, deeper, more certain, carrying the weight of vows spoken and promises made. This was her husband, her partner, her future. And she was his wife, his companion, his home. The months that followed their wedding fell into a rhythm that felt both new and ancient, as if they'd been living this life together for years instead of weeks. Cole moved into the house with easy grace, his presence filling spaces Marian hadn't realized were empty. Jacob and Lily adapted to calling him Pa with an enthusiasm that made Cole's eyes shine every single time. Summer ripened into full bloom across the ranch, the work endless but satisfying. Cole spent long days training horses and managing the growing herd, while Marian continued her work in the kitchen and took on additional responsibilities helping Vera with the household accounts. In the evenings, they'd gather as a family, Cole teaching Jacob to whittle Lily curled up against her new father, while he told stories, Marian mending clothes or preparing the next day's bread with a contentment that still sometimes caught her by surprise. You're glowing, Rosa observed one August morning as they worked together preparing breakfast. Like you swallowed sunshine, Marian laughed. I'm happy. Is that such a surprise? Not a surprise, just beautiful to see. Rosa paused, then gave Marian a knowing look. Though I'm thinking maybe there's another reason for that glow. What do you mean? Marian, honey, I've seen enough pregnant women to recognize the signs. When's the last time you had your monthly? Marian's hand stilled in the biscuit dough. She'd been so busy, so caught up in her new life that she hadn't really thought about. But Rosa was right. It had been weeks, maybe 2 months. Oh, she breathed. Oh. You didn't realize... No, I've been tired, but I thought that was just from all the work. And my stomach's been unsettled in the mornings, but I thought maybe I was eating too much at supper. Marian pressed a hand to her abdomen, wonder dawning in her eyes. Could I really be... Only one way to know for sure. Go see Doc Blackwell in town. But Marian? Rosa's smile was warm. I'd bet my wages on it. You're pregnant. The news sat inside Marian like a secret treasure for the rest of the day. She wanted to be certain before she told Cole didn't want to raise his hopes if she was wrong. So she waited until the following Saturday when Cole had business in town to make the trip to see Dr. Blackwell. The doctor's examination was thorough and professional. When he finished, he sat back with a satisfied expression. Congratulations, Mrs. Trapper. You're about 8 weeks along, I'd say. Baby should arrive sometime in late February or early March. Marian's hand went to her belly, protective and already loving. Everything's all right. The baby's healthy. Far as I can tell, everything's perfect. You're healthy, strong, eating well. No reason this shouldn't be a smooth pregnancy. Blackwell smiled. How's that husband of yours going to take the news? I think he'll be thrilled, Marian said, her own smile so wide it hurt. He's wonderful with Jacob and Lily.
He'll be a magnificent father to this baby, too. On the ride back to the ranch, Marion planned a dozen different ways to tell Cole. But in the end, when she walked into their home that evening and found him helping Lily practice her letters at the kitchen table while Jacob carved a whistle under his supervision, the words just tumbled out. "I'm pregnant." The room went silent. Cole's head snapped up, his gray eyes wide. "What?" "I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. You're going to be a father." For a moment, Cole just stared at her. Then he was moving, crossing the room in 3 long strides and sweeping her into his arms. He held her so tight she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking. "A baby," he whispered roughly. "Our baby." "Our baby," Marion confirmed, tears streaming down her face. "Are you happy?" Cole pulled back just enough to look at her, and the naked joy on his face was answer enough. "Happy, Marion, He seemed to struggle for words. "I never thought I'd have this. Any of this. A wife, children, a real family, and now a baby." His voice cracked. "It's more than I ever dreamed possible." "What's happening?" Lily demanded, tugging on Cole's sleeve. "Why is everyone crying?" "Happy tears, little bit," Cole said, scooping her up without releasing Marion. "Your mama's going to have a baby. You're going to be a big sister." Lily's eyes went round as saucers. "A real baby that I can hold?" "Not for a while yet." Marion laughed. "But yes, eventually." Jacob had gone very quiet, his young face serious. Cole noticed and set Lily down, kneeling in front of the boy. "What's on your mind, son?" "Will you love the new baby more than us?" Jacob asked in a small voice. "Because it'll really be yours." Cole's expression turned fierce. "Jacob, look at me. You and Lily are really mine. Blood doesn't make a family, love does. This new baby will be my child, yes, but you and your sister are my children too. Nothing changes that. Understand?" "Promise." "I promise. Cross my heart." Cole pulled the boy into a tight hug. "You're my first son, Jacob. That's always going to mean something special." Jacob clung to him, and Marion watched her husband comfort her son with such tenderness it made her heart ache. This was what family looked like. Not perfect, not without fear or doubt, but full of love and commitment and the willingness to work through hard things together. That night, after the children were asleep, Cole held Marion close in their bed, his hand splayed protectively over her still flat stomach. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess this up?" "You won't," Marion said with absolute certainty. "You're already an amazing father to Jacob and Lily. You'll be the same with this baby. But this is different. This baby will depend on me from the very first breath. What if—" "Cole," Marion took his face in her hands. "You're going to be wonderful. I've watched you with the children for months now. The patience you show, the kindness, the way you listen to them, and take their concerns seriously. That's what makes a good father. Not blood, not biology. Love and commitment, and showing up every single day." Cole was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her belly. "I want to be worthy of this," he finally said. "Of you, of them, of this life we're building." "You already are. You've been worthy from the moment you rode out into that blizzard to save 3 strangers." Marion kissed him softly. "Now stop worrying and get some sleep. We've got a long journey ahead of us." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through fall and into early winter. Marion's belly grew round and full, and the baby, their daughter, as it turned out, during a visit to Dr. Blackwell, was active and healthy. Cole became even more protective, insisting Marion rest more, take on lighter duties, let others handle the heavy work. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," Marion protested one afternoon when he'd carried her from the kitchen to the house despite her perfectly functional legs. "Humor me," Cole said, settling her gently on their bed. "I've already lost people I cared about. I'm not taking any chances with you or this baby." The raw vulnerability in his voice stopped Marion's protests. She reached up and pulled him down beside her, cradling his head against her chest. "We're going to be fine. Both of us. I promise." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make it true. And so will you. We'll take care of each other like we always do." Cole's arms came around her, careful not to squeeze too tight.
and they lay there together while the winter wind rattled the windows and the baby kicked against Marion's ribs, reminding them both of the life they'd created. Winter came early that year, bringing snow and bitter cold by December. By February, Marion was enormous and uncomfortable and ready for the baby to arrive. She waddled more than walked. Her back ached constantly, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her own feet. But she'd never been happier. Cole treated her like spun glass, constantly asking if she needed anything, adjusting pillows, rubbing her swollen feet, reading to her when she couldn't get comfortable enough to sleep. Jacob and Lily competed to be the most helpful, bringing her water and snacks and small treasures they'd found to make Mama smile. The ranch had become their world, their community. Vera had essentially adopted them all as family. Rosa was already planning to be the baby's honorary aunt. Martha had knitted more baby blankets than one infant could possibly use. On a fierce night in late February, when wind howled around the house and snow fell in thick sheets, Marion woke to the first contractions. "Cole," she said quietly, shaking his shoulder. "It's time." He was awake instantly, reaching for her. "You sure?" "Very sure." Another contraction rolled through her, stronger than the first. "We need to get the children to Rosa's and fetch the midwife." What followed was controlled chaos. Cole bundled the sleepy children off to Rosa's cottage, then rode through the storm to bring back Sarah Morton, the ranch's midwife, who'd delivered countless babies over her 60 years. By the time they returned, Marion's contractions were coming faster and harder. "Good, strong labor," Sarah announced after examining her. "This baby's eager to meet the world. Could be a few hours, could be longer. No telling with first babies." She paused. "Well, first babies with this father, anyway." Cole held Marion's hand through every contraction, talking to her in a low, steady voice, reminding her to breathe, telling her how strong she was, how proud he was, how much he loved her. When the pain got bad enough that Marion screamed, he never flinched, just held her tighter and kept whispering encouragements. "I can't do this." Marion gasped at one point, exhausted and overwhelmed. "Cole, I can't." "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "You're the strongest person I know. You survived a blizzard near starvation, losing everything. You can do this. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." His certainty gave her strength when her own wavered. Marion bore down with the next contraction, then the next, pushing with everything she had. The world narrowed to pain and pressure, and Cole's voice anchoring her through it all. And then, just as dawn was breaking and the storm was finally clearing, a baby's cry split the air. "It's a girl!" Sarah announced triumphantly, holding up a squalling, perfect infant. "Healthy as can be. Look at those lungs!" Cole's face was wet with tears as Sarah cleaned the baby and placed her in Marion's arms. She was tiny and red and absolutely beautiful, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably be gray like her father's. "Our daughter," Marion breathed, unable to look away from the tiny face. "Cole, look at her. She's perfect." "She's a miracle." Cole corrected his finger, gently stroking the baby's impossibly small hand. She gripped it immediately, and his breath caught. "Hello, little one. I'm your papa." "What are you going to name her?" Sarah asked as she cleaned up. Marion looked at Cole, and they spoke simultaneously. "Hope." "Hope Trapper," Marion repeated softly, "because she represents everything good that came from the worst time of our lives, because she's proof that love can bloom even in the coldest seasons." Cole kissed Marion's forehead, then the baby's. "Welcome to the family Hope. Your brother and sister are going to love you so much." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door, and Rosa's voice called out, "Can we come in? The children are desperate to meet their sister." "Send them in," Marion called back, adjusting the blankets around Hope. Jacob and Lily burst into the room, followed by a more sedate Rosa. They climbed carefully onto the bed, eyes wide with wonder. "She's so tiny," Jacob breathed gently, touching Hope's hand. "Is she really ours?" "She's really ours," Cole confirmed. "Your baby sister." "I'm going to teach her everything," Lily announced importantly. "How to pick flowers and take care of dolls, and first she needs to learn to eat and sleep." Marion laughed. "But yes, someday you'll teach her all those things." They sat together like that, Cole on one side, the children on the other, baby Hope cradled safe in the center, and Marion felt a peace so profound it brought fresh tears to her eyes.
This was her family, imperfect blended, born from tragedy and storm, but absolutely real and filled with love. The door opened once more to admit Vera. Her stern face softened with emotion. "Heard we have a new addition to the Thornton Ranch family." "Come meet your granddaughter," Cole said the word granddaughter, making Vera's eyes shine suspiciously. The older woman approached and looked down at the baby with an expression of wonder. "She's beautiful. Looks like she's got your stubbornness, Marion, and Cole's determination. God help us all." Everyone laughed, and Hope chose that moment to yawn enormously, her tiny face scrunching up in a way that was absolutely adorable. "Welcome to the world, little Hope," Vera said quietly. "You've been born into a good family. They'll take care of you, teach you to be strong, show you what real love looks like." She looked at Marion and Cole. "You did good, both of you. Built something real and lasting from nothing but determination and faith." After everyone had visited and finally left them in peace, Cole lay beside Marion on the bed, Hope sleeping between them in a nest of blankets. Outside, the storm had passed completely, leaving behind a world transformed by fresh snow and brilliant sunshine. "A year ago," Marion said softly, "I was walking into a blizzard, ready to give up my children so they could survive. I was broken and desperate and convinced I'd lost everything that mattered. And now," Cole prompted gently, "now I have everything I never dared to hope for. A husband who loves me, children who are happy and healthy, a home, a community, and this perfect tiny miracle sleeping between us." Marion turned her head to look at him. "You gave me back my life, Cole Trapper." "You gave me one worth living," he countered. "Before you I was just drifting, going through motions. Now I have purpose, meaning a reason to wake up every morning and be grateful." Hope stirred in her sleep, making soft baby noises that made both her parents smile. "She's going to have such a good life," Marion said. "We'll make sure of it. Her and Jacob and Lily. They'll grow up knowing they're loved and safe, and that family means showing up for each other no matter what. They'll know their mother is the bravest woman in Montana," Cole added, "and that sometimes the best things in life come from the hardest moments." Marion reached across their sleeping daughter to take Cole's hand, their fingers intertwining. "We did it. We actually did it. Built a life from ashes." "We did it together," Cole corrected, "and we'll keep doing it every day, whatever comes." They lay there in comfortable silence, watching their daughter sleep, listening to the sounds of the ranch waking up outside their window. This was home. This was family. This was everything they'd fought for, and more than they'd imagined possible. Hope had been born in a storm, just like their love, but she'd arrived with the sunrise bringing light and promise, and the certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family, united, strong, and filled with the kind of love that could survive anything. The seasons turned as they always did, indifferent to human joy or sorrow, marking time with the ancient rhythms of planting and harvest, birth and growth. Hope's first months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and tender moments, the tiny infant slowly transforming into a bright-eyed baby who smiled at her father's voice and calmed instantly in her mother's arms. Spring arrived with its usual fanfare, melting the last stubborn patches of snow and coaxing green shoots from the thawed earth. And with it came changes that would test the Trapper family in ways they hadn't anticipated. It started with a letter that arrived on a Tuesday morning in late April, delivered by the weekly mail rider. Marion was hanging laundry while Hope napped in a basket at her feet, enjoying the warm breeze and the sound of Jacob's laughter from the corral where Cole was teaching him to rope. The letter was addressed to Cole Trapper with a return address from Texas that made Marion's stomach clench with inexplicable dread. She tucked it into her apron pocket and tried not to worry, but the weight of it seemed to grow heavier as the day progressed. When Cole came in for the midday meal, she handed it to him without comment, watching his face carefully. His expression shuddered immediately upon seeing the handwriting. He turned the envelope over twice before finally opening it, his jaw tight with some emotion Marion couldn't identify. As he read, the color slowly drained from his face. "Cole, what is it?" He looked up at her, his gray eyes haunted. "My father. He's dying, asking if I'll come home before the end." The words hung heavy in the air between them. Marion knew Cole had left Texas under difficult circumstances, had walked away from his family's ranch, and never looked back.
In all their conversations, he'd spoken of his father only once, and even then with a bitterness that suggested deep wounds. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "I don't know." Cole set the letter down his hands, trembling slightly. "We didn't part well. I swore I'd never go back." "But he's dying." "Yeah." The single word carried the weight of 15 years of complicated history. "He's dying." Marion moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "Tell me what happened. Why you left." Cole was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then slowly he began to speak. "My father was a hard man, believed in discipline and breaking things to make them strong. Horses, land, sons. After my mother died when I was 14, he got harder. Nothing I did was ever good enough. I wasn't tough enough, wasn't man enough, wasn't dedicated enough to the ranch." His voice roughened with old pain. "When I was 22, I got engaged to Catherine. You met her.
My father approved because her family had land adjacent to ours. It was strategic good business. But I felt like I was suffocating, like I was being forced into a mold that didn't fit. So the night before the wedding, I left, took my horse and rode out, and I didn't stop riding for 3 years." "That's when you started drifting," Marion said softly. "Yeah. Couldn't stay anywhere because I was running from what I'd done. The cowardice of it. Leaving Catherine at the altar, abandoning my father, and the ranch, proving every terrible thing he'd ever said about me was true." Cole's fingers gripped hers tightly. "I've spent 15 years trying to outrun that shame, Marion. And now he's dying, and I don't know if I can face him." Marion chose her words carefully. "What does your heart tell you to do?" "My heart says to stay here with you and the children where I'm finally happy, where I've finally built something that matters." "And your conscience?" Cole's laugh was bitter. "My conscience says I'm still the same coward I was at 22 if I can't face a dying man and try to make peace." "Then maybe," Marion said gently, "you need to go. Not for him, but for yourself, so you can finally put that shame to rest and come back to us whole. You'd be all right with me gone for a few weeks." Cole Trapper. "I survived a blizzard and near starvation. I can handle a few weeks running this household." She squeezed his hand. "Besides, you'll come back. I know you will. This is your home now. We're your home." The trust in her voice seemed to settle something in Cole's chest. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I love you. God, I love you so much." "I love you too. Now go make your travel arrangements. And Cole..." She pulled back to look at him seriously. "Whatever happened between you and your father, you're not that scared 22-year-old anymore. You're a good man, a wonderful husband and father. Don't let old ghosts convince you otherwise." 3 days later, Cole stood on the porch of their home with his traveling bag packed, saying goodbye to his family. Jacob clung to his leg with fierce determination. "You're coming back, right, Pa? You promised you wouldn't leave." Cole knelt down, his hands on the boy's shoulders. "I'm coming back, son. I swear it. This isn't leaving. This is going to settle some old business so I can be fully present here with you all. Understand? How long? 3 weeks, maybe 4. Depends on a lot of things." Cole's voice roughened. "But I will come back. You have my word." Lily was next, throwing herself into his arms with her usual enthusiasm. "Bring me back a present." "Lily," Marion chided, but Cole just laughed. "I'll see what I can find, little bit." He kissed her forehead, then stood to take Hope from Marion's arms. The 10-month-old baby grabbed his nose with chubby fingers and babbled something that might have been Papa. "You be good for your mama," Cole told her seriously, as if she could understand every word. "And keep growing. I want to see you walking when I get back." He handed Hope back to Marion and pulled his wife close for a long moment, his arms tight around her. "Take care of them," he whispered. "And yourself. We'll be fine. You take care of you." Marion kissed him deeply, not caring that the children were watching. "Come back to us. Always," he promised. They stood in the yard watching until his horse disappeared down the road toward town, and then Marion gathered her children close and led them back inside. The house felt emptier without Cole's presence, but it was still home, still safe, and he would be back. The weeks that followed were harder than Marion wanted to admit. She'd grown so accustomed to Cole's steady presence, his help with the children, his quiet strength at the end of each long day. Without him, the weight of managing everything fell entirely on her shoulders. Jacob tried to step up, attempting to take on his father's responsibilities, but he was still just a boy. Lily grew fretful and clingy. Hope seemed to sense the tension and fussed more than usual. But Marian had survived worse, much worse. So she rose each morning before dawn, worked her shifts in the kitchen, cared for her children, and fell into bed exhausted each night. Rosa and the other ranch women helped where they could, but everyone had their own responsibilities. It was during this time that Marian truly understood how much she'd changed. A year ago, being alone with 3 children would have terrified her. She would have seen it as proof of her inadequacy, her inability to cope. But now she recognized it for what it was, a temporary challenge, difficult but manageable. She was strong enough to handle this. Cole's absence didn't break her. It simply reminded her how much she valued his partnership. The letter arrived 3 weeks to the day after Cole had left. Marian's hands shook as she opened it, terrified of what it might contain. Marian. My father passed 2 days ago. It was peaceful at the end and we had time to talk. I can't say everything was resolved, but I made my peace with him and he with me. He understood why I left, though he never could quite forgive it. But he saw the man I've become and he approved. That's something I didn't know I needed until I had it. The ranch is being sold to my younger half-brother who's done right by it these past years. I wanted no part of it. This place holds too many ghosts, and it's not my home anymore. You and the children are my home. Montana is my home. I'm coming back to you. Should arrive within the week. I've missed you all more than words can say. Tell Jacob I'm proud of him for stepping up. Tell Lily I found her that present. Tell Hope her papa loves her. And tell yourself that you're the strongest, most capable woman I've ever known, and I can't wait to hold you again. All my love, Cole. Marian read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. He was coming home. He'd faced his demons and made his peace, and now he was coming home to them, to the family they'd built together. When Cole finally rode up to the house 6 days later looking travel-worn but somehow lighter than when he'd left, Jacob and Lily nearly tackled him off his horse. He caught them both laughing, holding them close while they shouted questions and exclamations over each other. Marian stood on the porch with Hope in her arms, watching the reunion with a full heart. When Cole's eyes found hers over the children's heads, the love and relief in them took her breath away. "Welcome home," she said simply.
God, it's good to be home, he replied, extricating himself from the children and climbing the porch steps. He kissed Marian thoroughly, then took Hope from her arms. The baby stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to remember, then broke into a huge smile and grabbed his beard. "She missed you," Marian said unnecessarily. "I missed all of you, every single day." Cole's arm came around Marian's shoulders, pulling her close, while the children pressed against his legs, and Hope cooed happily in his arms. This right here is everything I need in this world." That evening, after the children were in bed and they finally had time alone, Cole told Marian everything. About the difficult conversations with his father about the ranch he'd left behind, about finally understanding that running away had been necessary for him to become who he was meant to be. "He told me something at the end," Cole said quietly, holding Marian close in their bed. "Said he'd been wrong to try to make me into his image instead of letting me become my own man. Said he was proud of what I'd built here, proud that I'd found a good woman and made a real family." His voice broke slightly. "That's all I ever wanted to hear from him, and I got it right at the end." "I'm glad," Marian whispered. "I'm glad you had that closure." "Me too, because now I can be fully here, fully present without that weight on my shoulders. No more running, no more ghosts, just us and the life we're building." "Speaking of which," Marian said, a smile in her voice, "Vera offered us a bigger house. One of the foremen is retiring and his place has 3 bedrooms and a real parlor. She thinks we'll be needing the space soon enough." Cole propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with dawning understanding. "Marian, are you saying—" "I'm saying Hope's going to be a big sister sometime around Christmas." The joy that transformed Cole's face was like sunrise. He kissed her with such tenderness it made her heart ache, his hand already moving to rest protectively on her belly. "Another baby," he breathed. "Another miracle." "We seem to be good at making those," Marian teased. "We're good at a lot of things," Cole agreed, pulling her close.
Building a family, surviving storms, loving each other through hard times. Yeah, we're damn good at what matters. The months that followed were some of the happiest of Marion's life. They moved into the larger house, and Cole's expanded responsibilities as senior wrangler came with better pay and more respect. Jacob, now 9 years old, had become Cole's shadow, learning everything he could about horses and ranch work. His natural talent was evident to everyone, and the other hands had started calling him Little Trapper, which made him puff up with pride. Lily, at 6, had blossomed into a confident, chatty little girl who was learning to ride on a gentle pony named Buttercup. She approached life with fearless enthusiasm, and watching her laugh as she bounced through the pasture never failed to make Marion smile. And Hope, sweet sunny Hope, was walking now, toddling around the house on chubby legs and getting into everything. She'd inherited her father's gray eyes and her mother's determination, a combination that promised interesting years ahead. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and on a cold December night, when snow fell soft and silent outside, Marion gave birth to a son. They named him Thomas after the father Jacob, and Lily remembered with love, and it felt right, a way of honoring the past while embracing the future. Cole held his newborn son with tears streaming down his weathered face, this hard man who'd been gentled by love and fatherhood. "Hello, Thomas," he whispered. "Welcome to the family." It was on a bright June day when young Thomas was 6 months old, and the Montana summer stretched endless and golden before them, that Marion had her moment of reckoning. She'd taken the older children to watch Cole work with a new horse, while Rosa sat nearby with Thomas sleeping in her lap. Hope toddled between them, picking wildflowers with intense concentration. Jacob stood at the corral fence watching Cole rope a skittish gelding with eyes full of admiration. "When I grow up, I want to be just like Pa," he announced to no one in particular. "You already are, honey," Marion said, ruffling his dark hair. "You've got his patience and his way with animals." "And his good heart," Rosa added with a smile. "Your Pa's the best man on this ranch, Jacob. You could do worse than following in his footsteps." Lily came running up with a fistful of flowers. "Mama! Look what I picked. Can we make a crown like Aunt Rosa showed me?" "Of course, sweetheart. Come sit with us." As Marion's fingers worked the flowers into a crown for her daughter, she watched Cole in the corral. He'd stripped down to his shirt in the heat, his movements confident and sure as he worked the horse. At one point he looked over and caught her watching. The smile he gave her was private and warm, full of promises for later when the children were asleep. This man. This incredible, unexpected man who'd appeared from a blizzard and refused to let her surrender. Who'd taken on not just her, but her children, who'd given them his name and his protection and his whole heart. Who'd loved her through grief and doubt and fear, who'd shown her that moving forward didn't mean forgetting what came before. "Mama," Jacob's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You're crying. Are you sad?" Marion wiped her eyes, surprised to find them wet. "No, honey, the opposite of sad. I'm just grateful." "For what?" She gestured around them at the ranch that had become home at Lily, weaving flowers at Hope, babbling to herself at baby Thomas sleeping peacefully, at Cole, working in the corral, at Rosa, sitting beside her with the comfortable ease of true friendship. "For all of this. For you and your sister and your brother and Hope and Thomas and your father. For this life we have." "But we almost didn't have it," Jacob said with the solemn wisdom of a child who'd seen hard times. "Remember, when it was really bad before we met Pa?" "I remember," Marion said softly. "I remember every bit of it." And she did. Could still feel the bite of that killing cold, the desperation that had driven her to walk her children into a storm. Could still taste the bitterness of grief so profound it had nearly destroyed her. Could still hear her own voice screaming for someone to take her babies to save them when she couldn't. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone Marion had been in another lifetime. "Do you ever think about him?" Jacob asked quietly, his eyes on Cole. "My real Pa, Thomas?" Marion's heart clenched, but she answered honestly. "Every day. I loved your father, Jacob. I'll always love him. He was a good man who worked so hard to take care of us. But he's gone." "But he's gone," she agreed. "And Cole is here. And honey, they're both your fathers in different ways.
Thomas gave you life and loved you first. Cole is raising you and teaching you and will be there for all the important moments ahead. You don't have to choose between loving them. Jacob nodded slowly, processing this. Then, I'm glad we didn't die in the storm. I'm glad Pa found us. Me too, baby. Me too. Cole finished with the horse and vaulted over the corral fence with easy grace, heading toward them. Hope saw him and shrieked with delight, running on unsteady legs straight into his arms. He caught her up, tossing her gently until she giggled, then settled her on his hip. "What's all this?" he asked, nodding at Lily's flower crown. "Mama helped me make it." "Do you like it?" "It's beautiful little bit, just like you." He settled on the ground beside Mary and Hope, still in his arms, and the baby immediately tried to grab his hat. "How's our Thomas doing?" "Sleeping like an angel," Rosa reported. "This one's going to be easy, I can tell." "Unlike his sister," Cole said dryly, as Hope succeeded in pulling his hat off and crammed it on her own head. It fell over her eyes and she squealed with laughter. Watching them, her husband and her baby daughter both laughing in the golden afternoon light, Marian felt something shift and settle in her chest, a final piece of healing falling into place. She'd been so broken, so utterly shattered by loss and fear and the weight of impossible choices. She'd walked into a blizzard prepared to give up everything, including her own life, because she couldn't see any other way forward. But Cole had seen it, had forced her to keep moving, keep fighting, keep living, and in doing so, he'd given her the space to discover her own strength. Because that's what love did. It didn't make you weak or dependent. Real love made you braver, stronger, more capable than you'd ever been alone. "Thank you," she said suddenly, the words bursting out before she could think about them. Cole looked at her quizzically. "For what?" "For not riding past. For making me come with you that night. For not letting me give up." Marian's voice was thick with emotion. "You saved us, Cole. In every way a person can be saved." His expression softened and he reached out to take her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "You did half the saving yourself, Marian. All I did was give you a chance to remember how strong you already were." That's not," she started, but he shook his head. "It is. You think I don't remember how you looked that night, half frozen, dragging 2 sick children through a blizzard, still fighting with every breath in your body to keep them alive? That's not weakness, Marian. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen." His gray eyes were intense. "I just helped you see what was already there." "Well," Rosa interjected with a gentle smile, "you both saved each other, and that's how it should be. Now, stop being so serious and let's enjoy this beautiful day before we have to head back for supper preparations." They did sprawling in the grass while the children played, and baby Thomas woke to nurse, and Hope tried to teach her father how to make flower crowns with limited success. It was ordinary and perfect, the kind of afternoon that would blur with dozens of others like it in memory, but in the moment felt precious and complete. As the sun began to lower and they gathered up children and belongings to head back, Marian found herself walking beside Cole with baby Thomas in her arms. The older children ran ahead with Rosa, their laughter carrying back on the breeze. "I was thinking," Cole said casually, "maybe we should start looking at buying our own place. Small spread, nothing fancy, but somewhere that's ours that we can pass down to the kids." Marian's breath caught. "You'd want that to stop working for Vera." "I'll always work for Vera in some capacity. She's family now. But yeah, I'd like to build something that's ours, if you're interested." He glanced at her. "We've saved enough for a down payment, and Vera's already said she'd sell us that northern section that borders her land. Good water, decent grazing. We could run some cattle breed horses. Make it work." "A ranch of our own," Marian said wonderingly. The little girl, who'd grown up poor in Pennsylvania, the widow who'd nearly frozen to death in a Montana blizzard, was going to own land. Build something lasting, create a legacy for her children. "What do you think?" Cole asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "I think," Marian said firmly, "that we should absolutely do it. Build something that's ours. Create a home that belongs to the Trapper family for generations." Cole's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He leaned over and kissed her temple, mindful of the baby in her arms. "Then that's what we'll do. Starting this fall after the harvest. We'll break ground before winter." They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, the future spreading out before them full of possibility. It wouldn't all be easy, ranching never was. There would be hard years and lean times, injuries and setbacks, and probably more children to complicate everything. But they'd face it together as partners, as a family. That night, after the children were finally in bed and she and Cole had stolen a few precious moments alone on their porch, Marion found herself thinking about that desperate woman in the blizzard. The one who'd screamed for someone to take her children. The one who'd been ready to give up, to surrender, to let the cold take her rather than face another day of impossible struggle. She barely recognized that woman now. Not because she'd forgotten the pain or the grief or the grinding poverty that had driven her to such desperation. Those memories were still sharp, still capable of cutting deep. But she'd survived them, grown through them, become someone stronger and wiser and more capable than she'd ever imagined possible. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. "Just remembering," Marion said. "Where we started, how far we've come." "Long way from that trapper's shack," Cole agreed. "Longer than that. Then, long way from the person I was." She tilted her head to look up at him. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "The miracle wasn't that you appeared in the storm. I mean, that was miraculous too. But the real miracle was that I had the courage to accept help, to admit I couldn't do it alone, to take your hand and trust that maybe, just maybe, things could get better." Cole was quiet for a moment, his hand absently stroking her arm. "That does take courage. More than most people realize. I spent so long thinking I had to be strong alone. That asking for help was weakness, that accepting charity made me a failure. But you taught me that's not true. That real strength is knowing when you need help and being brave enough to take it. You taught me some things too," Cole said softly. "Taught me that running from your past doesn't solve anything. That putting down roots doesn't trap you, it sets you free. That family isn't something to fear, it's something to fight for." His arm tightened around her. "You gave me permission to stop drifting and start living." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the house, one of the children cried out briefly. Probably hope, having a dream, then quieted again. The ranch settled into its nighttime rhythms, peaceful and secure. "Do you ever regret it?" Marion asked suddenly. "Stopping that day, taking on 3 desperate strangers, all the complications that came with us." "Never," Cole said immediately fiercely. "Not once. You 3, well, you 5 now. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You're the reason I wake up grateful every morning, the reason I finally understand what home means. Even when Jacob tracks mud through the house, or Lily won't stop talking, or Hope throws food everywhere, or Thomas cries all night." Cole's laugh was warm and genuine. "Especially then. Because that's real life, Marion. Messy and chaotic, and absolutely perfect." Marion snuggled closer, breathing in the scent of him, horse and leather and summer grass. This man who'd saved her, loved her, given her back her belief in tomorrow. "I love you, Cole Trapper. More than I thought I could ever love anyone again. I love you too. More than words can say." They stayed there until the night grew cold, and duty called them inside children to check on doors to lock a life to return to. But first Marion stood and looked out over the ranch that had become their world. The buildings dark and quiet, the mountains looming in the distance, the vast Montana sky spread above them like a promise. She thought about the woman she'd been terrified, desperate, broken. And she thought about the woman she'd become strong, loved, whole. The journey between those 2 versions of herself had been painful and difficult and absolutely necessary. "What?" Cole asked, noticing her stillness. "Just taking a moment," Marion said. "To remember, to be grateful, to acknowledge how far we've come." She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "You know what else I realized? The happily ever after isn't a destination. It's not something you reach and then coast. It's a choice you make every single day, to love, to fight, to show up for each other and your children and the life you're building." "And do you choose it?" Cole asked softly, though the answer was written in every line of his face. "Every day," Marion said firmly. "Every single day I choose this life. I choose you. I choose us." "Then we're going to be just fine," Cole said, pulling her close.
because I'm making that same choice. Have been since the day I saw you in that storm. Will keep making it until my last breath." They went inside together, locking the door behind them, checking on sleeping children one last time before retiring to their own room. As Marian drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, safe and warm, and surrounded by the quiet sounds of her family breathing in the darkness, she sent up a silent prayer of thanksgiving. For the blizzard that had nearly killed her but instead brought salvation. For the cowboy who'd refused to ride past. For the ranch that had taken them in. For the community that had become family. For every hard choice and painful moment that had led her exactly here to this perfect, imperfect life she'd built from ashes and hope. She'd walked into a storm ready to surrender everything. But she'd walked out the other side stronger, braver, and more deeply loved than she'd ever imagined possible. And that transformation, that journey from despair to joy, was the real miracle. Not the rescue, not even the love story, but the courage to accept help when it was offered. The strength to keep fighting when giving up would have been easier. The faith to believe that even in the darkest moments, dawn was coming. Marian Trapper. Doyle, once desperate, once broken, closed her eyes with a smile on her face. Her children were healthy and happy. Her husband loved her fiercely. Her future stretched bright with possibility, and her heart, once shattered beyond recognition, was whole again. This was her happily ever after. Not perfect, never easy, but absolutely real. Built on love and trust and the kind of partnership that could weather any storm. And it was more than enough. It was everything. Outside, the Montana wind whispered through the grass. Stars wheeled overhead in their ancient dance. And inside a small house on the Thornton Ranch, a family slept peacefully safe in the knowledge that they belonged to each other completely, that whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together. The woman who'd screamed, "Take my children," into a killing blizzard was gone, transformed by love and hardship and the everyday miracle of choosing hope over despair. In her place was someone stronger, someone whole, someone who understood that the greatest courage wasn't in facing down death. It was in choosing life again and again, no matter how hard that choice became. And so the Trapper family lived and loved and built their legacy one ordinary day at a time. The storms would come again, they always did, but they would weather them together, sheltered by the unbreakable bonds they'd forged in the coldest season, warmed by love that had bloomed against all odds. Their story had begun in desperation and darkness, but it continued in joy and light, proof that even the worst blizzards eventually cleared, and that on the other side of every storm, if you were brave enough to keep walking home, was waiting. The end.